Good morning. Can everybody hear me? Good morning. Bonjour tout le monde. Let me introduce myself. My name is Susan Odell. I'm a 27-year tech veteran, most of that time here in Ottawa. I'm CEO of 80/20CS, and I spend my time helping companies solve problems that are blocking growth. I'm author of a book called Successful Change, which is relevant to the topic for today. It's really a practical field guide to solving complex problems. And lastly, I'm chair of the Ottawa Music Industry Coalition, where we're focused on embedding music in the fabric of the city to drive culture and economic growth. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome you to Leaders Creating a Sustainable World. We're streaming online across Canada and around the world. It's taking place at Bayview Yards, which is Ottawa's Innovation Centre. And it is located on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. We are all grateful to have the opportunity to be present in this territory as we come together as a national community. I respect and affirm the inherent and treaty rights of Indigenous people across this land. I recognize the contributions that Métis, Inuit, and Indigenous peoples have made and continue to make, both in shaping and strengthening the community and the country as a whole. If we hope to succeed with the topic of today's event, creating a sustainable world, we have much to learn from Indigenous people about sustainability, their deep-rooted connection to the land, traditional ecological knowledge, and the community-based decision-making. It's invaluable and really should be looked at as guideposts in forging a harmonious relationship with the environment and society. So let's just take a few moments and honor and recognize the First Peoples of this land. For today's event, we are thrilled to have business leaders, entrepreneurs, fellow allies, investors, sustainability thought leaders, and partners from our region, throughout Canada and around the world, attending today online and in person. A special shout out to everybody who's avoiding the frigid air outside this morning. I think our numbers online have probably gone through the roof, but for all of you that are here, thank you for making it in person. It's an absolute joy to be your host today. The program today is compelling and it's really full, so I'm going to try to get through this as quickly as I can so we can keep going. But before we begin the content, I would like to welcome His Excellency David Cohen, U.S. Ambassador to Canada, for opening remarks.
So thanks very much, Susan, and good morning, everyone. Everyone, I figured people would get up and they'd see what the weather was like and turn around and go back to bed. So it's nice to see such a great early turnout. I'm really pleased to have been invited here to say a few words at the top of today's exceptional lineup of women business leaders from the United States and Canada. I do want to thank our longtime friends at Invest Ottawa for making today's event possible, and in particular, Sonia Shorey and Audrey Wilsey and Katie LeClaire from her team. Invest Ottawa does terrific work to support Ottawa's business ecosystem and attract new economic growth opportunities to this dynamic city. And Sonia, it's really a privilege for us to be able to continue to partner with you. Also want to thank Communitech and the Mars Discovery District for their partnership. We're here with the new CEO, acting CEO of Mars, and I think this is maybe the first time I'm appearing with you in that role. So it is good to see you, and thanks for making the trek from Toronto back over to Ottawa for this event. March, as you all know, is Women's History Month in the United States, but today's event shines a spotlight not on history, but on women shaping our collective future. These forward-thinking women, including Americans Rihanna Lynn and Jewel Burke Solomon, are on the front lines of creating a more equitable and sustainable economy. They are translating vision into tangible action in critical fields like the life sciences, clean tech, and impact investing. The women you will hear from today embody the important concept of building back better. And that is a concept that President Biden and Prime Minister Trudeau incorporated into their February 2021 roadmap for a renewed U.S.-Canada partnership, which serves as a blueprint for both countries and a blueprint for Mission Canada as we look forward into the future. Our leaders recognized that the pandemic had inflicted serious economic hardships on businesses, especially small and medium-sized businesses, and especially small and medium-sized businesses owned by women, people of color, indigenous peoples, and other underrepresented groups. So when the United States and Canada developed their joint approach to economic recovery, and that's what we're talking about with Building Back Better, we decided there was a need to not just build back. It wouldn't be enough to just bring our economies back to where they were before the pandemic, but to take the opportunity to build back better. And better means that we needed to build back inclusively and equitably by addressing and dismantling barriers to level the playing field for economic success for all. And we also need to build back better sustainably by prioritizing our health and the health of the planet through investing in clean energy solutions and improving supply chains. Today's lineup of speakers exemplifies these efforts. Too often, in both the public and private sectors, and as entrepreneurs, women are denied opportunities to meet their full potential because of gender bias, lack of mentorship, and wage disparities, among other barriers. These barriers are even higher for women from historically underrepresented groups. So it's absolutely crucial that we all keep shining a spotlight on gender inequality, wherever and whenever we see it. I know we've made some progress. I tout the progress too, but we're not there. And until we're there, all the way there, we have to keep shining a spotlight on this issue. And I'd like to share just a few data points to illustrate why this is so important. First, the gender pay gap. Women in the United States earn about 83 cents on every dollar that men make. Canadian women do a little better, earning about 90 cents on every dollar that men make. Better, but still not equal. And I'd note that the gender pay gap starts at a level on entry into the workforce, and it just grows during the course of careers. And there are lots of reasons for that, some obvious, some not obvious. I'll call out what I think is an obvious one, and that is that there continues to be discrimination in the treatment of women in our workforce. And they don't get the same promotional opportunities, the same opportunities to compete for higher paying jobs, and that contributes to the growth in the pay gap as careers proceed. Second, this relates to that point, there's a disturbing lack of women in leadership positions. Only 20% of the directors of publicly traded companies are women, and only 10% of private sector executives are female. Finally, women entrepreneurs continue to face systemic barriers to accessing capital. Although Canadian women entrepreneurs and founders represent 40% of business owners, they receive less than 3% of venture capital dollars. The situation in the United States is very much the same. And when I talk about this topic, and I do so frequently, I try to make the point all the time that you can't produce numbers like that by accident. They are the product of overt and unconscious discrimination, and it's why I continue to say that no matter how much progress we've made, and again, we have made progress, we have a long way to go. So factors like these are why I have identified diversity and inclusion as a central Mission Canada priority immediately upon my arrival in Canada. We have mobilized the entire Mission Canada team from our embassy and 7 consulates across Canada to engage, understand, and address some of the challenges that women-owned SMEs are facing. It's also why I prioritize meetings with diverse business owners, particularly women, every time I travel across Canada. The U.S. government will continue to make women's leadership and economic empowerment a cornerstone of our foreign policy, because when women are empowered to contribute their full talents to society, we all benefit and we are all better equipped to solve the greatest challenges of our time. Our commitment to this is part of what makes the United States and Canada competitive globally, and it's why we have to double down on our efforts to remove gender inequity. So I wish you a productive day of learning and networking. As I said, you've got a great lineup of speakers, and I hope you all enjoy the day, and mostly I hope you enjoy the warmth inside here. You'll hear the wind whistling out there during the course of the day and say, boy, isn't it nice to be in this very temperate climate. So thanks very much and enjoy the day.
Thank you, Ambassador Cohen. We appreciate your presence here today and your powerful message of allyship, very, very strong message of allyship that everybody today and everyone who's going to watch the recording of this will see down the road. I'd like to turn your attention to our screens for a message from the Honorable Philomena Tassi, Minister responsible for the Federal Economic Development Agency for Southern Ontario. And in addition, we're very happy to have Nancy Gardner here today, who is the President of FedDev Ontario. Thank you so much for your support and for being here.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to acknowledge that I am joining you virtually from Ottawa on the traditional land of the Algonquin Anishinaabe peoples. I wish I could be with you today in person, but was so pleased to be invited to share a few words as you kick off what I know is going to be a great day. Sonia and the team at Invest Ottawa have been working hard to deliver a series of events this month in celebration of International Women's Day, shining a light on the important role of female entrepreneurship and leadership in Canada. Today's event brings together a group of women investors, entrepreneurs, and industry leaders who want to make a positive impact on our world. One of our government's top priorities is to support a sustainable and inclusive economy, one that provides opportunities for all Canadians and that protects the health of our environment for future generations. We are pleased to support organizations like Invest Ottawa that both advance clean innovation and support underrepresented entrepreneurs to achieve their dreams through programming, mentorship, and networking. Events like this are opportunities to keep talking about how we can move forward in a more equitable and sustainable future and help to inspire solutions, innovations, and change across industry, academia, and government. Women bring such a valuable lens to these interesting topics. Thank you for all being here and for the insights you are about to share and offer. I wish you a wonderful event.
Thank you, Minister Tassi. So International Women's Month is all about community, and it's built on this year's theme of Inspire Inclusion. For those who have participated in other International Women's Month events this month, whether you joined the F Factor or the Angel Investor Breakfast, Elevate International, or any of the other events we've had in the month of March, you've already experienced the power of these events firsthand. If you're joining for the first time, whether it's in this room or online, this event will reinforce the reality that only together, as a collective, can we maximize our impact and create long-term sustainable change. We have to do it together. Today is about long-term sustainability in entrepreneurship and investing, made possible by our partners. This event is delivered in collaboration with our Pan-Ontario partner Mars Discovery District and Communitech, long-term partners of Invest Ottawa. We want to take a moment to thank BDC's Capital's Thrive Venture Fund for being the International Women's Month title event sponsor. We could not have done the same reach and impact without your support. So thank you, BDC Capital's Thrive Venture Fund. And to our event partners and long-term International Women's Month supporter, MDK Business Law, we are grateful for your support year over year. Our program today includes health technology and life sciences, impact investing, and clean tech, as well as a keynote speech and fireside chat with Rihanna Lynn. She is an entrepreneur, an AI innovation activist, a scientist, a creative consultant, and CEO of Journey Foods. We have a lot to learn from her today. It's going to be amazing. Before we get into the panels, I want to share some data points and statistics to set the stage. Ambassador Cohen actually shared a lot of them that I'm going to repeat because it's worth repeating in terms of where we have to go as a society. Women entrepreneurs represent approximately 1 in 3 entrepreneurs worldwide. According to the Government of Canada's Women's Entrepreneurship Strategy, women-owned businesses in this country contribute approximately $150 billion a year to our national economy. Women in business are more likely to prioritize social and environmental goals. By our nature, we are more likely to include those. To adopt sustainable practices, to incorporate sustainability into their business models. From the outset, things like ethical sourcing, eco-friendly production methods, and community engagement. Research conducted by BDC found that nearly 60% of women entrepreneurs consider environmental and social impact in their decision-making process. Despite the emphasis on sustainability, women still face extreme challenges in accessing funding, as Ambassador Cohen indicated. What was a little bit unfortunate for me to hear in his talk is that, the percentage I have was about 4%. The percentage he pointed out in terms of VC funding was 3%. Regardless of whether we take 3 or 4%, that number is not good enough, and we need to do better. Today, we are spotlighting and learning from women actively engaged in addressing the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. We recognize the importance of women's leadership in achieving these goals and creating a more sustainable world. With that, I have a few housekeeping items, and then we'll get on to the first panel. So we'll be taking questions during the last 10 minutes of each panel in each session, and our team will walk amongst you with a microphone. And we'll also be taking online questions via Hopin's live chat. So please, I encourage you to put your questions out there so we can all collectively learn together. All event registrants will have access to the full recording after today's event. And we'll also be taking pictures throughout and video footage. So please smile when you see the camera pointing your way. Or you could do this if you don't want to be on the camera. It's up to you. Be sure to share your experience today via social media using the following hashtags. Hashtag IWM 2024 and hashtag Inspire Inclusion. For those here in the Foundry, we look forward to serving lunch at noon. If you need to use the facilities, there are washrooms located on either side of this great room. Just walk down the stairs to your left or down to the right, and you will see them. They're very, very obvious to find. With that, let's kick off our first panel discussion. Please join me in welcoming to the stage our moderator, Eric Skimson. Okay. And our panelists, Elizabeth Kelly Gregoire, Sheon Heida Hunji, apologies for my pronunciation, Katie Robb for the Health Tech and Life Sciences panel. Thank you. Please join us.
Good morning. And Sheun and EC, I see you on camera, so welcome. We've got a few members here with us and then a couple joining virtually. Good morning. In 1955, Anne Murrow Lindbergh, who was the wife of Charles Lindbergh, wrote a book called Gift from the Sea. And these were meditations on her own experiences and what she observed from other women of the challenges that they faced in balancing demands of work, life, family, home, and self. It's striking 75 years later how familiar the themes of this book are. One passage caught my attention, and I think it's worth sharing because it embodies why the conversation we're having today is so critical. She writes, "The best growing ground for women may be in the widespread mushrooming of women's discussion groups of all types and sizes. Women are talking to each other, not simply in private, in the kitchen, in the nursery, or over the back fence, as they have done through the ages, but in public groups. Excuse me. They are airing problems, discovering themselves, and comparing their experiences. More important, they are beginning to talk to men, openly and honestly, often arguing and challenging. And men, to their credit, for the most part, are listening, and I believe understanding more than we ever expected. Much of this exploration and new awareness is uncomfortable and painful for men and women. Growth in awareness has always been painful. One only need remember one's own adolescence. But it does lead to greater independence and eventually cooperation in actions. For the enormous problems that face the world today, in both the private and public sphere, cannot be solved by women or by men alone. They can only be surmounted by men and women side by side. My name is Erin Skimson. I'm thrilled to be here today to moderate this panel, and we are going to be celebrating and learning from incredible women today. This panel features 4 fantastic entrepreneurs whose efforts have created a more sustainable world through health tech and life sciences. Very challenging domain. I work as the director for McCellerate, which is McMaster University's DeGroote School of Medicine, Medical and Digital Health Accelerator. I've spent several years working at Stryker, which is a medical device company introducing new medical devices, and in fact, in early 2000s, began the inaugural Stryker Women's Network. I'm passionate about the benefits and impacts of healthcare and health tech, and look forward to the perspectives of the women on the panel. I'm going to ask each of the panel members to introduce themselves because I think they can do that exceptionally well. Kelly, I'm going to ask you to start, please.
Hello, check, check. Hi, everyone. My name is Kelly Gregoire. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Tricycle Data Systems. Really grateful to be here today, and I'm very happy to see men in the audience. Thank you for coming to support International Women's Month and this panel. I just wanted to share my passion is technology and people. I joined this company in 2017, before it was a company. And like all good stories, I made the decision to join this mission over an ice cream cone. I met our founder, Dairy Queen, in Bell's Corners, and we chatted about a very significant problem happening in the world. At the time, there was a significant opioid epidemic going on, and there was a need to do something and to act. And being individuals working in tech, we wanted to use technology to bridge compassion and empathy through a digital solution. So that's how we got started, and I am grateful to be here.
Thank you. Katie.
Hi, everybody. I'm Katie Robb. I'm the head of technical operations at Siemens Healthineers here in Ottawa. My entry into working in medical devices and pharmaceuticals started when I graduated from university, and I was looking for a way to use my science degree, but in a way that could help people. And I was so excited to find a job where I was making products that was life-saving for people. So I've been working for 25 years in manufacturing specifically, and looking forward to a great conversation this morning. And I'm a proud mom of a teenage boy and hope, to see what he does and how he can, be inclusive and continue to help foster inclusiveness in society.
Thank you. I'm not sure if health tech or teenage boys are more difficult. Shayun, you are joining us remotely, virtually. Welcome, and please tell us a bit about yourself.
Thank you, Erin. Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be here with you all and look forward to having a great conversation. My name is Sheon. I'm the founder of MedInclude, which is really a contraption of medical inclusion. And MedInclude started about 3 years ago out of my experience working with cancer patients and just seeing the overwhelming volume of medical information that they receive. And it took me back to my own time as a teenage girl caring for my aging grandmother and being that intermediary between providers, healthcare providers, and my then grandmother who didn't speak a word of English. And so I was looking for a tool to help my cancer patients better manage their medical information and better understand it as well. And was so certain that after so many years that I cared for my grandmother, there had to be a tool out there, a resource, a platform that helped patients and caregivers manage medical information. And unfortunately, I in my research, I didn't quite find something that was patient-centered. And so decided to found MedInclude out of that experience, working directly with the patients to think of what a solution that benefits them and is relevant to them would look like. And so thrilled to have been on that journey, really quite interesting. One of the things that I see when I talk about that journey is the fact that I think naivety and just not understanding immense amount of expectations that goes with being an entrepreneur in the life sciences space is one of the reasons why I ventured into this space and might not have done so had I known how much work it really entails. But we're here today, and I'm really looking forward to an exciting conversation and sharing some of that journey with you all.
Thank you, Shayun. The naivete and excitement with which we enter things sometimes is what sustains us. Elizabeth, or EC, please, we'd like to hear from you.
Thanks, Erin. And thank you, Sonia, and everybody who's putting on events like this. I know how much work it is, and it's greatly appreciated. I know I look like I'm in witness protection program right now. I'm actually here from a sunny part of Georgian Bay, and I'll see what I can do about the lighting in a moment. But my name is Elizabeth Cayley. I also go by EC, and I'm the co-CEO of a company called Poppy Health, and you can find us at poppy.com. And what we do is we spend our time helping buildings be both green and healthy by following emerging building standards and building code. And my entrepreneurial journey started in my 40s. And prior to that, 20 years, I spent running fast-growing business units in large tech companies. You'd know the names of them. And the opportunity came up in my 40s to give up a regular paycheck and the security of that for working on a problem about sustainability that I thought was important to see if we could work and do in the world. So when my first company, that one proved to be a little bit ahead of the market, what I decided to do was see startups from every single angle I could, not just from a founder angle. And so I studied startups for my doctorate. I spent a lot of time mentoring founders, organizing events like this one in Toronto and Oxford and Silicon Valley. And what I did is then I joined a couple of startups and helped them grow and helped them with really great exits, one of which I'll talk about a little bit later, I think. And then 5 years ago, I decided I wanted to do something from scratch again with the founder of the previous company I'd been with, Meta. And I haven't regretted a moment of it. And over the last 5 years, though it's been a very challenging 5 years for startups generally, I'm proud to report that 90% of the venture capital we've raised as an organization, even though we're a hardware SaaS organization, we've had led from female-led funds or female investors, 90%. And despite being a deep tech hardware company working in a very male-dominated HVAC commercial real estate market, 60% of our team identifies as female, and the whole team comes from incredibly diverse backgrounds. And I think a lot of that has to do with having a woman co-lead the company and both of us making that as a priority for ourselves. So incredibly happy to be here.
Thank you. I think maybe of the 3% invested in female-led enterprises, yours might take up like a third of that. So.
Mostly American funds, a couple of great Canadian funds, but mostly American. So
yeah. Fantastic. So today, we're here to celebrate leaders creating a more sustainable world. And sustainability implies that your business's bottom line is driven by making a positive impact, defined economically, socially, and environmentally. In healthcare, the bottom line is often guided by a framework known as the quintuple aim. And this balances enhancing the patient experience, improving population health, reducing cost, care team well-being, as well as advancing equity in care. So these considerations might seem to be in opposition, but there's an interesting breakthrough that's happened in research that actually shows that the proposition that these aims, if they are all taken together, actually reinforce one another. And so the industry has recognized that omitting any of the 5 aims creates a very hollow victory that does not live up to the promise of value-based care. So I'm interested to hear from each of you how you've managed to achieve a sustainable balance in the various considerations or aims that define the bottom line of your business. Shayon, I'm going to begin with you. As you mentioned, MedInclude was begun from a very personal experience and your professional training, as well as observed inequalities in the healthcare system for underrepresented populations. I'd love for you to expand on how the EDI lens has informed the work that you do.
Absolutely. Thanks, Erin. So when you think of miscommunication in healthcare, it really disproportionately impacts patients who are from underrepresented communities. And so in building a MedInclude, one of the key themes that has been central to our work, whether that is in terms of how we design our platform or who we work with, has really been to take an intersectional look into the patient experience and to think of themes and identities beyond what is physically presenting. And so, for instance, when we're having community engagement conversations and patient conversations with our community, one of the things that we think about is what does our solution and our platform mean for patients who are not just stomach cancer patients, for instance, but stomach cancer patients who are caregivers, or stomach cancer patients who identify as being a member of the 2S LGBTQ+ community, or stomach cancer patients who are Black. And so to think of the way that we're driving our solutions and building our platforms with that in mind, and include their perspectives, co-design with those patients and their caregivers as well as their healthcare providers, so that whatever solutions we're building does not just become a more generic platform that's available, but one that really is at the heart of the needs of the patient. So a practical example that I'd like to share is in one of our conversations at the initial start of our platform and our product, we had developed a system to help simplify medical information into grade 5 reading level and also make that available in multiple languages, which was great. But what we then found was there were patients who didn't speak English as a first language and had or could receive that information in their mother tongue, but then they also could not read in their mother tongue. And so we had to make changes with that realization to embed another feature within our platform that then reads that translated message to them out loud in Mandarin or in Arabic or Swahili. And that's just one example of the different ways that we're thinking beyond what's readily known and readily available within the sector, to really think of those that we might consider to be at the margins of our society and include and embed what's really relevant to them in the way that we're building our platform. And so diversity and belonging and inclusion and equity in the healthcare system is really central to the work that we do. And we try to make that manifest in different ways across our work.
Thank you. Gives me the feels when you talk about those experiences.
Yeah, I am. They truly give me life. I am truly passionate about just patient conversations for sure.
Yeah, thank you. Kelly, Tricycle was launched, in 2019. You've been there for longer than that, but there were some initial aims of the company, but I'm curious about how those have shifted as the company's matured.
Yeah, shifting is an important part of the journey. You have to be attentive to the communities you serve and the markets you are delivering products for. So when we first started, we were heavily committed to clinical solutions. And what that means is creating digital health technologies for clinical audiences and people that are dealing with a lot of personal health information. So it's a very regimented, very regulatory type of environment. Certainly had some great success and continue to deliver programs in the clinical space. The shift we experienced and then we continue to experience is when we stop and we accept and understand that there's no one size fits all for anything, whether you're building a tech or product or ideas. And what we learned a couple of years in was that the tech that we built that we're really proud of didn't work for all populations. Shocker. And it is not intended, it is important to listen to the audiences you serve. So the big pivot point we had was really understanding that the tech that we built, and it's a similar story that was just shared, didn't resonate with all the audiences. So when you're dealing with vulnerable populations, or in our case, we started to use our technology with First Nations. We've done an incredible amount of work in the last 4.5 years working with First Nations populations and communities. And we learned that the tech that we built, the language, the accessibility, the culture, even the graphics we chose, the color, the style, certain words that were used were not resonating with the audience, and that created a barrier. And that is the opposite of what our core value was, which was actually to reduce barriers. So our key pivot point was shifting and making sure that we had technology that served the population that we were trying to address, and really adjusting our products. I completely echo what was just said, which is making sure that tech is accessible. So not only low touch sort of, you don't need the latest and greatest technology. We want to make sure people that have connectivity issues can use our product. We want to make people make the content that we're using in our technology accessible for people with language barriers. We also want to make sure that the types of information we're sharing resonate with the audience. So I think that was a key pivot point, was shifting from a very clinical space where it's very strict, and we broke a lot of rules. We broke things that on purpose that have existed for a while. The way, for example, a patient might be asked a question would not be the same for an individual, a person of color versus a person that is an Indigenous. So we really wanted to make that shift, and we did that by creating a whole new product line.
The product's never done. Katie, Siemens Health and Ears have 3 sustainability pillars. 1, improving healthcare access for all. 2, preserving our planet's resources. And 3, engaging our diverse health and ears. How do you, or how have you seen Siemens balance these, what seem like sometimes competing interests that are all essential to your bottom line?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have all experienced healthcare going, we're lucky here in Ottawa that we have, great hospitals, they're easy access for us, but that's not the reality for a lot of people around the world in remote locations. And so one of the ways that Siemens Health and Ears is helping for access to healthcare for all is actually something that we're making here in Ottawa. So we make a portable blood gas testing device, and that allows healthcare providers to do testing, critical testing on patients. They don't need to go to a hospital, they don't have to take a lot of blood, And so it makes it, you know, a lot easier for healthcare professionals to get results and to help those patients that need this critically. So, you know, when we're looking at platforms, when we're looking at the kind of devices that we want to make, we're looking at, you know, of course, we're going to make some things that work for the hospitals, but also how can we expand that out into the community? So that's one way. I just also, we really do look at how can we involve our healthineers, our employees, and we have a lot of employee resource groups within our organization, and we're looking at things like green initiatives, sustainability, you know, diversity, and I just would want to point out that I actually have a group of ladies here with me today who are part of our women's Impact Network initiative, and we actually had a big International Women's Week event here in Ottawa last week. So that's another way that we've kind of looked at sustainability.
Wonderful. Well, welcome. This is the table here?
Yeah.
Welcome, ladies. It's wonderful to have you here today. Thank you. EC, Poppy's sustainability aims began with your previous company, Meta. You shared a little bit about that with us earlier. Maybe tell us about how that journey has led Poppy and your technology to reconcile two aims that seem quite disparate, which is green and healthy.
Yeah, thanks for the question. At the beginning of starting the company, I would say we didn't know if it was possible, but the wonderful thing about having a lot of customers in a lot of locations and using all their data to figure things out, we did find that they actually can go hand in hand while people are saving money too. But maybe just to start with what we did at Meta, most folks don't know that Meta today is due to a Canadian AI company that I was lucky to be a part of that was based out of Toronto for many years. And at Meta, the original Meta, we were helping scientists accelerate their research using machine learning, using AI, way before it was cool and way before people really decided they wanted to invest in machine learning. But just as we were finishing up our Series B in 2017, we decided to sell our company to Mark Zuckerberg and his wife, Dr. Priscilla Chan, and join their new techno philanthropy. And our mission morphed a little bit, but it was still online with what our whole team had signed up for, with the mission to help cure diseases by the end of the century by helping scientists. So after a few years launching and building and launching products for their organization, my co-founder and I, Sam Molyneux, decided that it was time for us to start a new company. And it was largely because of the statistic we had heard. You know, we were focusing on helping, you know, medical research and helping new drugs be discovered and helping with vaccine therapies, which was all incredibly rewarding. But we heard that nearly half of what everybody gets sick from every year around the world, universally, is a respiratory illness that is caught from another human being because we spend so much of our time indoors together. And our hypothesis when we started the company was that if we take the biotech, take it out of the lab, take it out of the hospital, and instead of treating humans with a new medication or medical device, we actually treat the air that we share indoors, treat that air like our patient. That was really why we started the company. And yes, to just do a little segue, after we left the Chan Zuckerberg initiative, our Meta became the Meta, meta.com, our domain, and even our logo with the infinity symbol. That's I don't know if many people know about that little Canadian tie. So with Meta, we were just getting off the ground when the pandemic hit, and we were talking to Eva Lau, an incredible Canadian woman, and she convinced us to raise funds. And we went on, built products, hardware products to help stop outbreaks in workplaces around the world, and really felt like we were delivering on our mission to stop illnesses. And what we found with monitoring over 1,000 different locations is that just as some areas of buildings are being underventilated, so there's not enough clean air so that we're not catching the flu or COVID or RSV or something else from each other, we found almost as many zones, depending on the building or more, that are way overventilating and wasting energy. Buildings are the second largest producer of carbon emissions, just after transport globally. And heating and cooling is the most expensive thing you can do in running a building. And so what we found was there's this Goldilocks zone that, between overventilation and underventilation, for all different kinds of buildings, including homes, but all the places we work and go to school and learn, that can easily be measured by our technology and helps people stay healthy and saves most buildings a whole bunch of energy and money. And that really challenged the belief that green and healthy is always going to cost more, and it's always going to be sort of a burden to, financially speaking, to get that to happen. When we actually went out there, collected the data that nobody ever collected before, and found that you actually can do both at the same time.
Thank you. I love that data is actually driving the sustainability. And, you've been doing that for an awfully long time. I wasn't aware of the Meta connection to Canada, so I think that's kind of a point of pride. I've been bragging about you for the last few days since I met you. Kelly, Tricycle's products are heavily informed by lived experiences of your clients and maybe some of your staff, I don't know. You've talked about that Tricycle has changed some of their practices based on those observed lived experience. Maybe talk about have you actually incorporated those practices in your business and made that part of your business plan?
Okay, get ready. I love this question. Lived experiences, if anyone isn't familiar with what that is, we all have lived experiences. Being a woman and understanding what it's like to be a woman is a lived experience that you can share with another woman. Being an entrepreneur is a lived experience. Somebody with an addiction has lived experiences. What I'm really proud of is the company that we are today. I mentioned we started in 2017. We were 3 people. We didn't have a product. We didn't have a customer. We had a really passionate idea and a really passionate founder and co-founder. Started as 3 people. We are now 240. We have 88% of our company that identify as Indigenous and 55% that identify as women. I say that because I'm really proud. I think those lived experiences and those populations and perspectives are really important to influence business and product. But when I talk about lived experiences and how we work with our communities, and communities could be anyone, but it's populations that we serve. So we build technology for First Nations communities, for veterans populations, for youth populations, and for people with addiction and mental health. So quite a difficult population, lots of disparities, lots of injustices and judgment and shame. So it's really important when you're building something, or it was important to us and then continues to be important, that we incorporate community. And I've heard that word a lot, and I just gotta say it again, because community is really, really important. And lived experiences is a notion of tapping into people that have experienced the challenge that you're trying to solve. And we actually, in 2021, introduced peer support as a resource. So peer support workers are people that have lived experiences, and we brought that into the fold of technology. So now what we can do is we can tap into individuals who can provide support through our digital health solutions.
Thank you. It's, medtech, we've said medtech and healthcare is challenging when you start to think about those lived experiences and the patient at the other end of that. The importance of what you're doing is really, it hits home. Katie, in Anne-Marie Lindbergh's message, she talked about the numerous challenges that we all face in various parts of our lives. I'm going to ask you to talk about a setback or an unexpected challenge in business that you've encountered, and how did you get through? What did you lean on to or learn?
Sure. So, I think we've all experienced challenges in our careers and in our business and trying to get products going. Certainly, in my past, I was working to develop a new pharmaceutical, and it was a race against time. There's other competitors out there that are trying to develop the same thing as you. And, we were working on this critical project, and we had a failure in the project. It was a big setback, big loss of time. It was incredible pressure. and, felt like we were letting our customer down, we were letting ourselves down. It was a really hard time. And yet, when I look back, I was so proud of myself and our team because we owned it. And we sat down and we're like, okay, we had this big failure. Let's look at, what happened. What can we do? How can we fix it? How can we, take the time and then optimize that time to give the best path forward for our customer? And so the team really pulled together, and we put that forward. And, we were really not looking forward to having that conversation with the customer. It was going to be a very difficult one. And yet they were really receptive because we came, like I said, we owned what we did. We were matter of fact about what happened, the issue that occurred, and we had our plan. And, we went on eventually to be successful. But what I learned from that is, the team coming together, so critical. All of us being real and owning the issues that happened. And we all experience these setbacks. And it's just a bump in the road. Eventually, you can look back on it that way. And, so there's always a lesson to be learned and a way to move forward positively.
Thank you. Hindsight's 2020, but perspective in the moment's important. We have about 5 minutes left, so I'm going to turn to EC. You've been around the entrepreneurship block a few times, as you've shared. What advice do you have for entrepreneurs in our audience, maybe female entrepreneurs in particular, and any particular words of wisdom?
Well, I'll be concise. 2 words: be blunt. I know even the word blunt probably makes many of you uncomfortable, so feel free to substitute in straightforward. But it's really important to say what you mean, what you want, what's good enough, what's not good enough, when you need something by. And sometimes it's a factor of gender or age or our Canadianness. We tend to, and this has been a problem for me that I've been working on now for many, many years, add a whole bunch of extra words that we think are making ourselves seem friendlier or more approachable, and are really probably just confusing folks on the other end, or just muddying the waters. So if you look at the last business email that you wrote on the next break, and you see how many exclamation marks you put in it, then the more exclamation marks, I believe, is strongly correlated by the number of extra words you've probably put in it, so that somebody who's receiving this email feels a little bit better. And we don't have to do that. What I found is there's a huge relief from the people who are getting information from me when I am being straightforward, because they're never guessing what I mean. So be blunt.
I love it. It's not our job to own other people's reactions or emotions, is it? Well done. Shayun, mentorship is critical in supporting entrepreneurs and innovators. I'm going to ask you to talk about either one female or one male mentor who's been particularly impactful, and what have they taught you?
I'd like to talk about Dania Del Mato. Dania has been my mentor for a couple of years now. She's the director of Greenhouse, University of Waterloo's Social Impact Incubator. And she's taught me a lot of things over the years, but one of the really key ones that continues to inform the course of my work and my life in general is really, and we've talked about it here a lot, it's that community is really so important in the work that we do as entrepreneurs. Community and collaboration really are the key ingredients that would propel you forward. I've learned, as she has taught me throughout your work, ideas are great, and they're also a dime a dozen, to be honest. It's really important that, in relationships, in the way that we work or that I work, I continue to grow in community and really be collaborative that way, and open about what we're building, support other entrepreneurs as well, as much as we can, with information, with our time. And so I'd say that that has really served me well, because humans and individuals and communities are really what drive innovation, and drive the ideas to execution and fruition. So I'd say community and collaboration is has been one of the greatest lessons I've learned from Tanya.
Very last question. This is a quick power round. Strong innovation support programs like where we are today, the ecosystem partners, collaborators, and community are essential at every stage of at every funding stage or every stage of the entrepreneurship journey. Each of you represents a very different stage in your development journeys. I'm going to ask each of you to address the non-entrepreneurs in our audience. We've got an audience that includes a variety of Canadian innovation community, government, funders, academia, researchers here today. So to this support group, I'm going to ask each of you, what one support program, aid, would you request from this community that's going to help you be sustainably successful? Katie, I'm going to start with you. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I think I'm going to say mentorship for young women. We just keep seeing the pools of women getting smaller as we move through our careers and move up within our careers. And so let's encourage the young women and really mentorship to help keep those pools bigger.
Wonderful. Beautiful. Shayun?
I'd say funding, and I'll just, take on Elizabeth's words and be really blunt about this. We're really early stage in our organization, in our startup, and it's unfortunate that we're already starting to get advice from different blogs around, you better be incorporated in the US. Have you started to look at the US market and speak to US customers? You need to go as a matter of fact, I'll be in San Fran in the next couple of weeks as an output of some of those conversations. And the feeling is that the Canadian market just is not bullish enough when it comes to early stage companies, and they want you to have been established to a certain extent before you then come back to Canada. Well, then it's too late, right? Because I'll be in the US by then. So I'd say that being a bit more bullish about funding, especially for women entrepreneurs, especially for underrepresented women entrepreneurs, is really important and can help us as an economy to improve and increase some of those numbers that we heard earlier in the session.
Hallelujah. Yes, thank you. The crowd agrees. Kelly?
It's hard to pick one. I would love to. I'd love to see more investment in prevention. That's a really near and dear place in our heart. There's a lot of great investment in treatment and post-care, but prevention, preventative medicine, preventative tech. And then I'm gonna piggyback on that and say I'd love to see more investment in peer support, so people with lived experience. We have a massive deficit in our healthcare profession. We have a declining number of behavioralists and professional mental health therapists, and lived experience peer support workers can help bridge that divide. I'd love to see more investment in that.
Beautiful, thank you. EC?
Yeah, I definitely say 100% resonate. I could talk about Canadian funding versus American funding for hours, but I won't. I will touch on the last comment, which is about prevention. I think it's really important for Canada not to fall behind in enforcing new standards, building codes, especially like ASHRAE 241, where what we're trying to do is make sure that people don't get sick in the first place, because the air they're breathing is actually clean enough for the number of people in that space. And by also saving energy, you're slowing down climate change, which is what has been causing, or a lot of scientists believe is what's causing more zoonotic diseases like COVID, et cetera, to emerge. So if you can find a solution that both reduces the amount of energy our buildings use and keep the air clean inside, then every business, not just small businesses, but every kind of business and every kind of school, every kind of shopping mall and grocery store will all benefit, both at a macro level and a micro level.
Thank you. I want to say thank you to each of you for the amazing work that you're doing, for sharing your time and insights and wisdom with us today. This has been such a pleasure. I want to say thank you to our hosts and sponsors for giving us this opportunity, having this growing ground in this discussion with women around this really important topic in the medtech and health tech space in particular. And I'm now going to pass the mic back to Sue, I believe. Thank you very much.
I think we were going to maybe have, is there one question? One question? We'll take one, just one question, please. We'll just wait for the microphone to come over. Thank you.
I'm not sure that it's as much a question as it is a statement, but I'll say that I am in healthcare and that we've spoken a lot about making prevention a priority, making environments a priority, and one of the biggest missions of the nursing population in this country is to provide preventive care and to do a lot of preventive education and to connect people with preventive methods to be able to prevent disease or prevent disease progression. However, in this country, nurses are the only healthcare providers or services that are not insured. And so this is a corporate setting. This is a women corporate setting. And I would like to encourage all of the women who are able to carry out the word or ask their corporate leadership to say, hey, can we provide insured nursing services to keep our workers healthy, to keep our workers' families healthy, to keep our communities healthy, because nurses have a great, great part to play in keeping their communities healthy in prevention as well as in treatment. But in prevention, mostly it's in the community where the care is not insured at all. So if it's on anybody's radar, I would really appreciate it. And if anybody here is from an insurance provider, just feel free to come and ask me any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Any responses from the panelists? Okay, we'll leave that statement where it is. Thank you so much for providing that insight. Wonderful. So thank you, Erin, for moderating a really incredible panel, and to our panelists, Elizabeth, Kelly, Shayon, and Katie. I made a few notes in terms of my key takeaways from today, like the intersection of allyship and the fact that it's got at least a 75-year history based on Erin's reading, and the increasing presence of women in life sciences and health tech. I think the importance of language is critical. How can you make what you're providing to market actually be relevant and relatable to your audience? That's important in any industry. I loved EC's humble and lasting Canadian infiltration of the Meta logo. I mean, that's incredible as well. But I think the message of being blunt in your intention and your messaging, and that intersection of mentorship and lived experience, just some really incredible takeaways from that panel. So thank you so much. Okay, we have one more panel discussion before our break. And for this discussion, we're focused on impact investing. So I'd like to welcome our moderator, Megan Maltby, to the stage, along with our panelists, Jewel Burt-Solomon, Severin LaBelle, Seema Aurora, and Melissa Allen, to the physical and virtual stage. Welcome.
Thank you. Give everyone a minute to get up here with me. Awesome. Do we have people on the line? Okay, there we go. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to the Impact Investing panel. We're going to kick things off with the basics, introductions. So maybe we'll start with Seema to my right. Just tell us a bit about yourself, your investment thesis, whether personal or a fund thesis, and why you self-identify as an impact investor.
So my name is Seema Aurora. I've actually been a founder of a number of companies, and primarily in the entrepreneurial space of recruiting, staffing, consulting, with regards to our clientele was primarily in the federal government for about 50%, and for the remaining portion was a lot of high tech, a lot of different service providers, and particularly with impact investing, it's one of those aspects that, when you have companies that you've been managing and running for 30 years, it's a very slow change. It's things that become more evident as time goes on. I remember doing, various different RFPs and contracting with the federal government. We would provide 12 legal boxes of paperwork. and they would be have to put in triple copies and so on and so forth. And now, to see that, you think, oh my goodness, how wasteful was that? So having said that, in about, at this point, I'm essentially exiting from a day-to-day, and I'm setting up my own fund. I have been doing angel investing for about 10 years. So there's a lot of opportunity now to work with other founders, other companies, where the impact investing and the sustainability aspects are center and front. So that's what's super exciting, to be able to focus now more on the balance where it can meet profitability as well as sustainability, which 30 years ago used to be a nice to have. So that's in a nutshell.
Awesome, thank you. Melissa?
Hello, nice to meet everyone. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. I'm Melissa, je m'appelle Melissa. I am Executive Director of League of Innovators, which is Canada's largest accelerator for youth-led startups. I also have my own VC fund called Capital M Ventures. And to be honest, I should be at home because we're closing the fund as we speak, so getting ready to launch. And at Capital M, what we focus on is investing in underrepresented founders, whatever that means to the founder. But we really like to invest in startup founders who reflect the Canadian population in impactful products and technologies that serve everyone in the world and not just a select few.
Thank you. And then shifting to online, maybe we'll go to Jewel.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Jewel Burke-Solomon. I'm super excited to be with you all virtually. I lead Collab Capital, which is an early stage venture capital fund focused on investing in Black innovators across North America. I'll say we can invest in Canada. So if you have any great founders, please send them our way. And what it means to be an impact investor, to me, I would say I'm reluctant. I'm a reluctant impact investor just on the title. There's historically been this connotation around impact investing that you are not going to be returns driven first. And so when we were raising our first fund, we tried not to say anything about impact, but we quickly learned that we care about making sure that we're invested in companies that are impactful. And so this time around, as we're raising our second fund, we really leaned into sort of that impact moniker while also explaining to the folks that we're fundraising that impact does not mean concessionary from a return standpoint. So, we look at everything across the board from who is building the company. We have a perspective that founders who are proximate to the issues that they're solving for are most likely to find the solution. We think about how are they building their team, making sure that there is intention around ownership across the team, so that when the company does extraordinarily well, it's not just the founders and investors who do well, but it's across the entire team. And we think about where they're building. So we really focus in on locations where there's a high concentration of talent, but maybe a low concentration of capital, and want to make sure that companies have what they need to build and grow in these locales. So we're thinking about impact across a number of levels and really focusing in on how can we do the best as far as allocation of capital to really fuel impactful businesses.
Thank you. Sabrine?
Hi, everyone. I'm Séverine Labelle. Bonjour. I'm very happy to be there to speak about one of my favorite subjects, I would say, since many, many years now. I'm the managing director of the Thrive Lab, which is an innovation lab and $100 million social impact fund here at BDC Capital that was launched just last fall. It is part of a wider initiative within BDC where, as you probably know, BDC has committed to invest $500 million into women-led businesses across the country in order to break down barrier and create more opportunities for women to access capital. And we're talking about investment capital. So the Thrive Lab is part of that wider platform, and we are focusing on investing alongside different ecosystem partners into woman-led social impact companies that are bringing solutions to some of our most pressing issues. So we're focusing in investing in businesses that are targeting SDGs like zero hunger, like a better well-being, a better health, access to education, as well as improving our way of consuming and producing goods, and especially as well into we're focusing on investing in businesses that are bringing solution to decrease inequality within our economy and society. So these are 5 themes that are super important for us, aligned with the UN SDGs, and I would say themes where women are particularly active. We're investing at the very early stage level, and we're doing so with partners that are active all across the country, because we want to make sure that our 100 million fund is accessible to women wherever they are in the country. So from Yukon to Atlantic Canada, we have partners there who kind of act as our team on the ground, meeting with women where they are and making sure that they have access to that fund that we've created.
Thank you. Okay, hopping into it. Jewel, you set me up perfectly, so thank you. I'd like to share a quote from PitchBook's annual update on impact investing. This was just published last December. It notes that despite perceptions of impact investing being synonymous with lower or concessionary returns, there is no evidence of this being universally true. So the best way, in my opinion, to combat stereotypes is to share some evidence, some receipts. So I'm hoping that each of you can share an example of a successful impact investment you've been involved in, and some of the key factors that contributed to both the financial success and a social or environmental success. And maybe we'll start online this time. Séverine, take it away.
Sure. Before working at BDC Capital, I used to be the CEO of a Quebec-based organization called Evol, and even before that, it was Famesol. So we're talking about an organization that was providing loans, support to women entrepreneurs for many, many years now. And the last fund that we've created with Evol is a $60 million impact fund. And why we've created that impact fund, it was because of our observation that women were creating impactful businesses. And why am I talking to you? Because I know you've asked me for one example, but with Evol, we've financed, we had a portfolio of over 300 companies, and 80% of those companies were still alive and thriving after 5 years. So I don't know if you know the statistic across the country, but almost half of all businesses are shutting down before getting to the 5 years. And one of the reasons why I believe that impact-driven businesses tend to live a longer life is because there's something even bigger for the entrepreneur to look at. Not only are they building a business to create jobs, not only they create business to create wealth, they're doing it because they are passionate about the problem they're trying to solve. And that passion and that, mission of building something bigger than themselves give them even more perseverance, grit, and that type of things that we're looking for successful entrepreneurs. Now, just coming back to your example, because we've just launched the new fund, the new $100 million fund, we've authorized 9 deals so far, but I cannot tell you yet what is going to happen with those early stage businesses. But I had the chance to interview someone really inspiring by the name of Tara Bush, who's a women entrepreneur here in Canada, the one behind the creation of Smart Suite. that was created in order to, make the war to sugar and help people decrease their consumption of sugar. Sugar is something obviously bad for your health. And Tara has been, with her company has been the most fastest growing CPG company in the last few years, and got an amazing exit, over $360 million exit. So for me, it's like this, a proof that it's not only possible to create an amazing impact with your company, as well as an amazing return on investment and as amazing financial success.
Thank you. And don't worry, we'll bring you back next year where you can share some of the successes. Jewel, how about you?
Sure. So I'm also an early stage investor and haven't been at it long enough to see the full potential and trajectory of all the companies, but we have some great companies that are well on their way. One of them that's my favorite to talk about is a company called Gooder, and they are in the food rescue space, and they're tackling two major problems, which is hunger and climate. And so what they do is they go to large corporations that serve food, so everything from airports to hotel chains to your tech giants that serve food in a cafeteria setting, and they pick up all the food that would otherwise be going into waste, but it's perfectly edible, hadn't been touched, and they take that food and deliver it to nonprofits serving homeless and hungry communities in the local area. And that business is actually our top revenue generating business in the portfolio, on track over $10 million in revenue and doing it profitably. And so I always love talking about it because it's double bottom line, incredible business, really strong founder, Jasmine Crow, and making an incredible impact. They've rescued millions of pounds of food from landfills. And they also help the corporations that they work with being able to report back what they're saving from a carbon emission standpoint. So it's really kind of win-win-win across the board, and just an incredible business that we love to support at Collab.
Love that. Thank you. Melissa.
All right, awesome. And so same with Jewel, early stage investor. Haven't quite yet seen the impact of the investments I make, but there's one a deal I'm working on right now, and I'm laughing just because he's in so demand that it's hard to get a hold of him, but he has committed to keeping some allocation for me, and it's a carbon capture company. But instead of carbon capture and store, it's carbon capture convert into other materials that can be reused. And what's cool is one of the co-founders, it's Black, and it's also an American-Canadian initiative as well. And the impact I've seen of that in other companies is there's a large company in Canada called Carbon Engineering that got acquired by Occidental Petroleum for $1.1 billion. And that's one of the big success stories in impact. And I felt the direct impact because I know a few people, like a couple people who invested in that company in the early stage. And then once that exit happened, donated 6 figures back into League of Innovators, who can serve entrepreneurs like Tara Bosch, who actually created Smart Suites at League of Innovators in 2015 when it was called The Next Big Thing. And yeah, I love Tara. She comes back and speaks to our founders all the time. So what's cool about this is people who have that impact-driven mindset, they build these companies that not just serve the world and the environment, but when there's an outcome, a positive outcome, everybody benefits. And because that mindset of service is still there, it's natural for then those investors and those founders to then give back in other ways, like through philanthropy. So that's one of my favorite examples.
Thank you. Seema?
There have actually been a number of companies, particularly right from our Ottawa ecosystem, that have presented with Capital Angel Network. One in particular that comes to mind is Grocer, and they are doing very innovative sustainable agriculture and vertical agriculture in greenhouses and so on. And when they presented a few years ago, I think that the idea seemed to be interesting, but is this going to be a hobby or will this really turn out to be a business? And they've had tremendous growth. And I've been talking to the co-founder, Alita Burke, who's just fantastic. And the growth trajectory that has now taken on in terms of the story and the amount of capital that they're raising, that they're into multiple series of funding raises, is really interesting. So I think one of the impacts with that is, look at the opportunities. I think now a lot of investors are looking at what's the sustainability aspect and what's the impact aspect along with the profitability issue, and that's now forefront. And particularly in terms of VC funding, that trajectory, we know a good story, a good impact is going to be a long-term investment. So I think that's what's really interesting, and I think there's a lot of opportunities that we can now look at from that particular point of view. And I think it encourages people who earlier might have thought, is this really going to allow for capital funding to pour in, or is it just an idea? But we're really looking, at the end of the day, we're not taking anything with us. We want to leave the world a better place than the way we found it.
Excellent local story. For those people here at Bayview, we have one of the grocer firms out back. So when you leave, you can swing by and check that out. So those are some great examples. I'd like to hear from you all how you actually go about finding these amazing companies. So what is your approach to deal sourcing and the diligence process? And is it different from a more traditional non-impact investor? And I'll just leave this one open to anyone who would like to take it. Yeah, go for it.
I can do a shout out. I think, again, something that was mentioned in the panel earlier was community. And shout out to Capital Angel Network. Jennifer Francis is here. Sonia Shuri and her team, again, with Invest Ottawa. I think just having this kind of opportunity where you can meet and network and be able to share ideas, and they're diligent with sourcing out founders who may be from all different industries and walks of life, coming to the table, presenting, going through the different channels. These kind of meetings are great, but the amount of work that goes in the background to put them together, and imagine consistently doing this 12 months a year. So Capital Angel Network, there's a monthly meeting, there's new founders that come out at each one. There's a lot of work and effort that goes in. And also the investors who attend every meeting are also looking to be able to connect with companies and founders that they have synergy with. So I think it's just an ongoing interest. It's not something which you can do a one-off or advertise and get a response for.
I can go next.
Yeah.
All right, great. So I want to go next because it just made me think of my friend who was a wealth manager, and that's the career I came from. I managed money at Desjardins for 5.5 years before this, and we used to joke, right, at other wealth managers and say, same way we find clients, it's the same way we find investors, is also the same way we find deal flow, and that is anyway, anyhow, anytime. And what that means is just being everywhere. Thank goodness, through League of Innovators, because we're national, I have eyes and ears across the country. And I know we're youth-led, but that still translates into having a presence in the tech ecosystem all across the country. And it's so funny because people will see me at different events across the country, different conferences. It looks like I'm having a great time, right? I'm socializing, having a mocktail, but really it is actually a lot of work. It's deal sourcing, it's being present physically. And then another strategy I'm going to start implementing more is to really announce that that is what my values are, and that's what I'm looking for in investment. So there's going to be a lot of branding and thought leadership and call outs online through LinkedIn and social media for more impact-driven businesses and businesses led by women and people of color as well. So not only is there going to be that, outbound deal sourcing, but I'm really going to start working on inbound as well, and so that people know what I look for, know what I'm looking for, know what I stand for, and know where to find me.
Excellent. Anything to add online before we move on?
I'll just add quickly, one of the things that I've started to do more of is watch the deal announcements for companies that I'm like, oh man, I missed that one, or that would have been really interesting to collab and reach out to the investors that did invest and set up coffee chat, and just say, hey, it looks like we're looking for some of the same types of companies. Would love to just be in the network. And I think spending time with other investors has become a really great channel for us. As people know what you're interested in, they're more likely to kind of send things your way. So that's been something that I've spent a fair amount of time on this year, is getting more conversations and time with other investors.
On the lab part, all of our thesis is around working in partnership with the ecosystem. So we've selected 26 organizations across the country that are acting very early within the journey of entrepreneurs. So we've selected a bunch of angel groups, family offices, incubators, accelerators, who are right on the ground working every day with the newest entrepreneurs out there. And their role is actually to be able to, see which one has the most, have a most promising business, definitely aligned with our impact thesis, and nominating those companies in order for us to invest in. So that strategy really allowed us to get access to a wide pool of super promising businesses, and working like this in partnership has been really like the best, I think, decision that we've made, because not only do we have access of great companies across the country without being all the time all around, although it's still important, I agree with Melissa, to be there and to be present in person. But because we're, our niche is quite targeted, we're investing in woman-led social impact businesses in 5 vertical. So we were afraid it would be a challenge to source those companies, but working in partnership with so many great organizations, and Sheboot, for example, who's in Ottawa, is one of our co-investment partner, has been a huge key to our success so far. And we have a full pipeline. Like, I think we have like businesses to invest in, into due diligence until late spring. And we're just like even asking our partners at some point to not go too fast, because we're just a small team. But so I think working in partnership is really a key, and it doesn't have to be a model like we have, but just to put some push on what Jewel said, working together as an ecosystem will make us stronger as investors, and will make the entrepreneurs stronger as well, and more capable of reaching the capitals they need to grow and to succeed.
Excellent. A lot on community relationship building, which is really the purpose of International Women's Month, so I love to hear that. We've talked about a lot of the successes. I'd like to kind of shift to some of the challenges, because I'm sure it's not all easy. So maybe you could each tell us some of the challenges that you've encountered as an impact investor. This could be related to, raising funds from LPs, finding deals that resonate with you, ensuring that your portfolio is supported at the later stages of growth. Whatever it is, we'd love to hear it. Maybe Jewel, we'll start with you.
All of the above. I would say there's plenty of challenges. For us, I think the biggest challenge has been when we started, we really had a new idea about what venture capital should be, and found a lot of flaws with the industry altogether. And so tried a new structure as far as how we were going about doing our investments. And I won't bore you all with all of the challenges of piloting a new structure, but there are many. And so we've had to really get to focus on what's most important. In our minds, it is getting capital to these entrepreneurs and trying not to put additional gates and bridges across getting that capital to the folks that we want to get it to. And so we've had to really simplify, because one of the things we found is that while we are entrepreneurs at heart and have lots of creative ideas, the LPs that we're pitching to are not necessarily so creative, and they like to be able to kind of put you in a bucket. And so the harder you make that for them, the less likely you are to get funding. So we've had to really kind of streamline and simplify and really just get to the point of we want to get capital to these impactful entrepreneurs. And that means that we have to sacrifice on some of the new innovative structures and ideas that we wanted to do in earnest.
Can I ask her?
Melissa.
Yeah, for sure. Like Jewel, I've been following your journey since Part Pig, so big fan over here. And no, seriously, like it goes way back, right? When Jewel, she sold a startup to Amazon, right? Got acquired, yeah, which is amazing. And then you started Collab. And what I thought was super unique and really ahead of its time, and don't worry, I swear this ties back to the question, is that when you launched Collab Capital, it was with a model, and correct me if I'm wrong, but where founders would have the opportunity built into their term where at a certain point they could buy back shares or buy back ownership of their company, and creating a third exit pathway. I thought that was incredibly brilliant. It makes so much sense, and it can be a win-win for both the investors and the founders, right? And I think it was ahead of its time, because I was talking with somebody who's very prominent in Canadian VC now about, I call it like the VC hamster wheel and how we have to recreate it. And sometimes that means not necessarily taking money for the sake of taking money, but being extremely capital efficient. Tara Bosch is my classic model of this, because she raised 2 small rounds but really relied on debt financing. I think she raised $6.1 million in total, kept the majority of the ownership, and then, and gave or granted ownership or equity to her earliest employees, and then had the largest exit of a woman in Canada, $360 million. Now, that is not a typical unicorn in terms of valuation, but to me, that's a unicorn, because at that point that they got acquired, they were generating $100 million in revenue every year. Incredible, done in a very super capital efficient way, and I truly believe in that philosophy. So when a founder comes to me and they say, I just want to raise enough to get going and then turn on that cash flow rocket ship, I'm all for that. And then if others want to I call it play the VC game a bit, or we'll say the traditional VC model, and that's raising pre-seed, seed, Series A, B, C, D, hopefully exit. I'm okay with that too. But in this new economy, in this new market, there needs to be a place for both, and I think both need to be accepted in the VC community. And articulating that to LPs has been a challenge. I sound like I know what I'm talking about now, but explaining it to them and trying to get them to see the vision of all these different business models that can lead to the same kinds of outcomes, that's been a little bit challenging, but I think we're moving in the right direction.
Absolutely. Seema, any challenges as an angel?
I think I concur with Melissa, and I think the challenge is that there's usually a small team at the initial stages, and I've met a lot of founders who, once they start to go through the circuit of fundraising, it becomes difficult to say, okay, who's now running the business, managing and growing the business, and I think the intentions are good, they mean well, but the execution is also a big part of it. So the story, the impact, the sustainability aspect, all those aspects are very important. But at the end of the day, the balance for the profitability aspect is also very important. And that's where I think that not just in terms of the fundraising, but also mentorship, coaching, having that added assistance, the community that can be around you, just to help out, because that first 18 months, 2 years, 3-year period, even up to 5 years is a roller coaster. And you just don't know what curveballs are going to be thrown at you. And I think that's where the right advice and the right decision making can make a world of difference. But I think, and that's frankly speaking, part of the appeal for investors like us who have funds and are looking to invest. We also want to make sure that where we are investing becomes a success story. But that means we're also carrying a little bit of that responsibility to make sure that we're there after the check is written to say we're going to be helping you out as you go along.
So true. The money, just money doesn't exist anymore. There needs to be the support behind it, I find.
Yes. Sabrine?
I was going to add, I think the challenge of impact investors impact investing in general is the challenge of making an evolution in our way of investing, and not only by bringing extra lenses, whether we're talking about gender lens or environmental lens, social impact lens, but also how do we look at a business and decide if it's an investable business or not. I feel and I'm new to investment, okay? I used to be more on the lending side of financing of the businesses. And for me, it's not about, are we investing in venture backable or non-venture backable type of businesses? This is words that I hear a lot in the market. It's more about, are we investing in promising businesses that will have a massive positive impact as well as a very good or massive return on investment? And that can be through technology, but that can be through other kind of business models. So I think it's good that we have that kind of conversation and see maybe businesses in another way and instruments of investments also in another way. So yeah, I think it's a big challenge, and it's not going to move tomorrow, but I think if we want to be successful as a whole, as a society, it's being able to question the status quo and to question what has been done within the VC world so far, and how can we make that move forward.
We're going to shift to audience questions now. So we have some folks walking around with mics.
Don't be shy.
Oh, we have one.
Your moderator has a question for you?
Yeah.
Or your MC. So great discussion. I'm really curious, the fund leaders on the panel, you know, there's royalty-based investing, there's angel investing, venture capital investing. I'm curious about your funds, and is there diversity in the vehicles that you use? For some people in the audience that aren't familiar, you know, you might have some entrepreneurs who are wondering what the options are. And I'm also curious about Gen Z, and if you're seeing a shift in what the younger generation wants to sign up for. Melissa, you mentioned the hamster wheel of, you know, seed, round A, B, C, exit. You know, are you seeing a shift with the younger generation?
Absolutely. So at League of Innovators, founders under 30, the difference between 2022 and late 2023 and 2024 has been huge in terms of attitudes towards wanting to fundraise. Back in early 2022, I think we were like at the peak of what we'll call like the bubble, if you will. And founders were more insistent that they had to fundraise. And they were really insistent at these really big valuations as well, even if they didn't have a fully built out product yet, even if they haven't had a fully fleshed out ideal customer profile, all of these basic milestones, right, that one would have to achieve, in my opinion, to take outside capital, right? Because you want to make sure you have a viable business moving forward before you take outside capital, because then there's a pressure to be able to justify the valuation, to be able to grow at a pace that will be on track to provide returns to those investors. And I felt like it was an uphill battle convincing young people about that. I got a lot of pushback. Gen Z, very, very, very passionate in their beliefs. But then now fast forward to right now, right? Because there's my fund, and then there's LOI Venture, which is a venture fund that invests only in the founders coming out of the programming. And I'm shocked at the resistance of a lot of founders, and I'm not mad at it, but the resistance of taking capital at all. It's like night and day. And they're just like, and there's almost, I would say, like a resentment in a way to outside to equity funders. It's interesting. And I think that is just testament of the market, of the bubble popping, of a lot of companies who took too much money, raised too fast at higher valuations without a business, and going from 1 billion to 0. I think that cynicism has entered the market, the sentiment. And so now the Gen Z, especially founders, are actually being more capital efficient, being more selective of who they take on as investors. Personally, I think it's a good thing. I'm here for it.
Any other questions? Oh, I see one.
And then there's a woman in the back as well.
Thank you. I'm going to bring this back to health tech because we heard the need for capital is important there. It's a long and expensive process. I think it would be like 5 years and $50 million of investment. I guess two questions. One, do you have a thesis or a strategy about looking at investment in technologies that might take longer to come to market? One, and two, if so, what advice do you have for those companies to make themselves more attractive to the investment community in Canada, and the States, actually?
And I could start this one again, only because I have a lot of friends and acquaintances in the industry, and I noticed that when it comes to health tech, there are, say for example, like investors who are passionate, diehard about health tech. That's all they're interested in. That's all they want to know. And then there are others who are more shy about it and kind of shy away from it because they don't know the industry that well. I almost feel like there's no in-between. The closest to in-between I've seen are my friends at the Firehood, because they invest in such a wide range of companies. And I feel like they over-index, but in a good way, on investing in health tech companies compared to other generalists. So my advice for you is you have to be so targeted. Say you're raising money, because I think that's what you might be thinking of. Be so targeted in your approach and who you're approaching, because there are people who are really looking for companies like yours. There are people that used to work for big pharma or that worked in labs or that are doctors. And like Halo Health, for example, an angel syndicate for doctors. And they only want health tech because that's all they know. So, and they're out there, they're out there, but it's going to take a little bit of extra effort to find them. The same way almost it took a little bit of extra effort for me to find the investors who really believed in unlocking the underutilized talent we have in our BIPOC and underrepresented populations in Canada. It took me extra effort. But the cool thing is that once you find those investors, they are the best, most loyal, supportive investors you could find.
And I think once the due diligence is done, as you said, Melissa, is the choice and the not just the idea, but the research and coming to fruition and how it's going to hit market, all that has to be clearly identified. But at the same time, the other vulnerability that we have, particularly with the Canadian founders and so on, they get eaten up by the US venture capitals before you know it. So it doesn't necessarily see fruition in Canada. So you have to be open to what the long-term consequences and the results are going to be, which is not a bad thing, but it's a fact.
One quick note to add to this, I think it's really important to understand the intentions and expectations of your investors, and making sure that you're pursuing investment that matches up with the trajectory of the business. So for an example, for us, we don't do a lot of early health investment. We do investment in health tech that is a little bit more mature and is figured out, has had some unlock. A lot of times for us, it's around insurance. So they figured out how to get insurance to pay for whatever the service or whatever the technology is. And that's where we step in and say, okay, we want to help this business grow and scale. But I think there are plenty of investors out there who have the right mindset and understanding of what the timelines actually look like. So it's just important to make sure that expectations are well established on both sides so that no one gets frustrated in the process.
I think we have a challenge in Canada of having more investors in the health space. And when I arrived at the lab a year ago and met so many women building businesses in the health tech sector and med tech and biotech, and there seems to be a big lack of investors out there. So I know it's a challenge. That's part of the reason why we've decided to include that thesis in our investment thesis at the lab. But it's 1 out of 5, and I would say that almost half of the pipeline are coming from the health sector. And although we have quite of a large fund with $100 million. It's not that much money when you want to make sure that the company you're investing in is going to have sufficient capital moving forward, especially if they are more heavy capex wise. So it's and for us, we're generalists, so we want to always to make sure if we invest in a health tech company that there's at least another co-investor that knows, have better expertise in what the company is building, because we don't necessarily have that capacity to bring that sort of expertise and support. So I find it's a very interesting, passionate world to be in and to be investing in, but it's also very complex with a lot of regulation, a lot of steps, lots of requirement in terms of capital. My hope is to see more life science and health funds coming in the next few years in Canada, because what I'm seeing on the ground is so many talented entrepreneurs and lots of women entrepreneurs building amazing solutions for our health.
I think we have time for one more. Yeah.
One more. Okay. Thank you so very much I'm learning so much just sitting back here. I want to ask if there's a way we can make making idea pitches, what you call elevator pitches, more tailored towards women and who they are. Like we've been told very clearly in the first panel that we need to be blunt. And there's one thing about women we can all identify with. We tend to want to overcompensate for who we are. And when we're making our ideas known to people, it's like we feel we have to back it up with so much. And yet for the investors out there, they don't have the time. How can we as investors, or, how can we make it more friendly? Someone said one of the challenges or one of the services they are trying to make available is to make sure that they're able to present it in a simpler language to the investors, for the entrepreneurs. But we see that because of that, there are more and more women entrepreneurs or ideas falling by the wayside. An example is in health tech, for example, where you see more investors interested in, do you have a platform? Do you have a way where you can get across to your customers or end users through the internet? What about just physical service, like personal support workers, for example? We're talking here about nurses and how they are very instrumental in preventive medicine, but they don't have insurance. What about the personal support worker who cannot have access to technology, but all she is just, this is who I am, I'm a woman and I care because I have a family and I'm used to converting the little raw materials like the food and I'm able to make something good out of it? How can you make capital available for such a simple woman in her little business idea? I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Does everyone understand the question?
I know. Let me repeat it back and see if I get it. I feel like there's two questions here. Number one is pitching to men versus pitching to women, and attuning your pitch to each one. Like, how do you do that in a way that makes sense? Number one. And number two is Severine brought up what's venture backable and what's not venture backable, right? And so I think that's part two of the question. So in terms of venture backability, I just made up that word, TM. Honestly, when somebody tells me their business idea, it doesn't matter to me what it is. If it's with the personal support industry, nursing industry, or if it's with B2B SaaS, can you see, is there a pathway to generating, sorry, this is just an easy rule of thumb, it's very quick, but I think, is there a pathway to generating $100 million in 10 years? Yes or no? Yes? Let's talk. No? Probably not venture backable. And why would you want it? Why would you want to take outside money and have all these bosses over you right? When you just want to have your SMB and operate it, or your lifestyle business, right? Venture isn't all that great. Like some VCs are kind of mean, like, and so you have to be like taking outside equity and giving up ownership in your company. You have to be very intentional and deliberate about it if that option comes to you. But especially in this market, there are so many people who are delaying doing that for as long as possible by grant funding, doing the pitch circuit, just sticking to friends and family, or bootstrapping / self-funding through revenue and through cash flow. So, and then just a quick stat, I believe, is that 5% of all companies are venture backable. So has that huge market that they can go after to generate the revenue that can then generate the returns through some kind of liquidity event like an acquisition or an IPO, right? And the rest, there's a multitude of other sources of funding out there for that. So definitely think through what you would like, or your ideal funding stack and timeline. And so that's my answer for number one, or for the one part of the question. The other part, it's really funny because I was on a call yesterday working out of this location upstairs, and there's a man, and he just stood there, but I think he left. But I think he overheard my conversation. I was on a focus group with other female general partners, and it was basically an hour of ranting about pitching to men. And I got really heated. It was so spicy because I remember after I closed my laptop, I turned around and he was kind of like looking at me and laughing. I was like, oh snap. But having said that, some of the outcomes that validated my experience from that like focus group or that group was that there is a different tone that you take when you pitch to women versus men, right? Again, yeah, men are more direct, to the point. Sometimes they can even be like dismissive, or they can come off as condescending, or like they know more. And sometimes they're amazing, but I've had all of those experiences pitching to men, and there's nothing I can do. If I'm pitching somebody and they automatically have an opinion about me, it's very hard to change, and I'm not going to work overtime to change that. We're probably just not the right fit. And then I noticed with women, I got a text from one of my LPs. She's like, I signed the closing docs. Are you eating? Right? Because I just went through an IVF treatment, and I need to make sure that I'm eating and staying healthy. And so she was checking in on me. And women have this amazing extra, I guess, layer of caring, of really talking to you and interacting with you like a human. We're truly partners on this journey. And in fact, I feel like I've raised money from women just being my true authentic self, women to women, because we understand each other. I could go into like stories, I don't know, about like crying and then I don't know. And through that, I don't want to say like get investment. I cried and I got investment, but there's an extra layer of support and understanding that women have, and I think that, correct me if I'm wrong here in the room, but is there a personal aspect to it?
I can definitely add to that. I think part of being an entrepreneur and a founder and running a company is you have to read the room. You've got, part of it is also, these are the communication skills, the aspect that you want to make sure that your story is understood and heard. And there is room for the care aspect, and then there's room for hard facts. That the idea of 10 years and $100 million, I think it's very key. And I think that is something that everybody needs to recognize. Otherwise, look at bootstrapping, look at friends and family rounds, look at, different options until you get to the stage where you can actually present and be able to have a term sheet that's going to be attractive. Because you have to understand, you're not the only one at the table. You are now competing for those dollars, and it's very important to maintain that particular balance. So again, I think being a woman is actually, it's a privilege and an honor, but it also is, just part of the game. And rather than looking at it and victimizing, just turn it into an opportunity and say, and the good news is that there's so many more women investors out there who can relate to you, who can understand that particular aspect. But if we want to work on the world stage and compete on the world stage, you've got to develop a thick skin.
So cry and make $100 million, right?
Okay, I think they're coming with a hook to yank us off stage, but it all comes down to finding the right capital for you, knowing the nuance, preparing, and there's organizations like Invest Ottawa to help anyone local with doing that identification and preparation. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Megan, and thank you for the panelists for joining us. It's been incredibly inspirational. So Jewel, Severin, Seema, Melissa, thanks for sharing your insights and your knowledge. I'll just come up on stage because I haven't been able to walk on stage yet, so I need to feel special. If you want, you can head down. The couple of takeaways for me, the positive impact you can have on the environment and social issues and still be profitable, right? They are not mutually exclusive, and there's tons of opportunity for everybody to have a win-win. I think the story about the food recovery company is amazing. The company is profitable, right? The corporations that are paying for that service are being able to increase their social environmental footprint, or taking away from their footprint, I should say. It's a win-win-win, and then the people that are less privileged and need the help are getting the benefit as well. It's an amazing story. So I think we can all think about that for the next 5-minute break only, because we're a bit behind time and we want to make sure we stay on schedule. But what I wanted to also let you know is that we have a special gift for everybody at Bayview Yards today. A local entrepreneur who wishes to remain anonymous has had a vision to create an engaging graphic novel on climate change, and it's called Because IPCC. Does anybody know what the IPCC is? Okay, it's the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and it is the global single source of truth for scientists and governments since its founding in 1988. So if you're looking for accurate global data on climate change, you want to look into the IPCC. So the fictional graphic novel is based 100 years in the future, and it looks back on the impact, the contribution that the IPCC has had on the planet. It was developed by local Ottawa entrepreneurs and funded by philanthropic contributions, including the Capital Angel Network. You've heard that time and time again. Really important, Ecology Ontario and the charity Succession. The team is going to start distributing the novel, the graphic novel, during the break. So please take it, share it with people around your work and your household. It is translated in 12 languages if you visit becauseipcc.science. And to the lady, a woman in the back that had the question around funding, Invest Ottawa has a program called Starter Company Plus that you should look into. It's just to ask your questions and share your ideas and see if there's a way to help you get your idea off the ground. Okay, so with that, 5 minutes, coffee. Okay, thank you. back to your seats. I probably should have said that a minute ago. Just asking everybody to take your seats, please. Thank you. Wow, you got quiet very quickly. Thank you for that. Okay, welcome back. I hope everybody is feeling refreshed from our, I think it ended up being about a 10-minute break, so that felt good for the legs, I'm sure. We've talked about so much today, and there's a lot more to cover. So without further ado, let me, or join me, I should say, in welcoming our next panel to the stage. More conversation about clean tech. Our moderator, Krista Jones, alongside Michelle Scarborough, Beth Koji, Kira Toiko, and Debrilla Mock, and Alicia Methethridge. So thank you. Over to you. Thanks.
Thank you. I think I'm on. Am I on? Can you guys hear me? I can't hear myself, which is weird. Welcome everybody to today. Thank you to Invest Ottawa. It's always such a, this is my second year coming to this event, and it's always very inspiring to look out and see the sea of faces all here for two purposes. One is for the advancement of women and making sure that the world gets the special type of innovation that comes out of women-led innovation, but also on this particular panel to talk about sustainability and clean tech. Because if you think about how hard it is sometimes to just be a woman in tech, being a woman in clean tech can even at times be that much harder when you think about the depth of engineering and technology that actually has to happen in that space such that we can make a difference in the problems that the world is facing. My background is actually I'm an engineer by training and spent a lot of time doing a lot of deep tech work. And I just know how challenging it is for all of the entrepreneurs and women we have on this panel today. We're going to start off, I'm going to hopefully try to make this really interactive. We're going to start off with each of the panelists by way of introducing themselves to talk a little bit about their own personal motivation for what has brought them to the clean tech space and what they're seeing from their particular vantage point. So we're going to start it off with going through each of the groups. Then we're going to get into a little bit of some case studies of how their technology is being used to solve some problems. And then we're going to get into some audience questions. So I just wanted to give you a bit of what we're going to be covering here. So maybe I'm going to do a little bit of online in person. I'm going to do kind of a back and forth so we can get some mix it up. So Alicia, why don't we start with you and maybe have you tell a little bit about who you are as well as introducing Rainstick.
Yeah, absolutely. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, awesome. That's great. Well, hello. My name is Alicia. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Rainstick. I'm currently in Canada's only desert region, that is the Okanagan Valley. I think a lot of folks don't realize that we have a desert, but that is here. So I'm in the Kelowna area. I think, that piece right there is probably an aspect of what made me really appreciate water conservation and energy conservation, but I never really recognized it. I spent 5 years before coming back to the Okanagan in Ontario, so I had a chance to meet with a lot of really interesting folks and work with some of the programs. Today I lead Rainstick, which we're really on a mission to allow people to thrive using only 50 liters of water per person per day. So it's a grand goal when you consider how much we use today. North Americans use on average 300 liters of water per person per day. So we have a lot of work to do. And, in terms of our technology and what we've discovered is 50% of that water use actually stems from the bathroom. So there's a really large opportunity to do much more within the amount of water that we're using on a daily basis and ways to conserve. And that's really why we've developed this technology. It's a shower appliance that saves the same amount as a whole home gray water system. And it's called Rainstick Shower. It saves 80% water, saves up to 80% energy while providing double the flow rate. So I think for me, we came onto this. I always appreciated water. I think I was always entrepreneurial. I studied international business, majored in sustainability, always, really cared and appreciated about that space and understanding it. I ended up then going overseas and working specifically in communities and understood the real problems that folks are facing with water, and specifically water security, water resilience, and how that really impacts a lot of daily practices and, the ability to lead normal lives. And so I really struggled with that. I came back to North America and said, we have exactly the same problems here. We use way too much water. And so there's an incredible opportunity to do so much more with less. And so that was really the, precipice. Sorry, it's 3 hours earlier over here in the Okanagan. So I'm just waking up. And so, in terms of, that was kind of the beginnings of saying we need to do more. And then, I met my co-founder, who's involved in energy conservation. And we began really focusing on what we need to do to decrease the amount of water and do so in a way where folks don't compromise. And so that was really the beginning of developing. And, I kind of fell into it. Have been working now just over 4 years on Rainstick. But it's been an incredible opportunity, incredible ride. And, I think we're just at the beginning of building some of this technology.
I still think that I need your shower. I really do. Maybe we'll go over here to Brella, to you. You can be next.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Oh, yes, I think it's working. Dobrila Mok, I'm Senior Vice President Marketing at Geotech Scientific. Geotech is a global leader in concrete technology platforms. We are revolutionizing the concrete industry by bringing artificial intelligence and IoT, Internet of Things technologies, to implementing innovation throughout the concrete life cycle and reducing concrete footprint. So a little bit about myself. I've been in high tech my whole life. I've started as an electrical engineer and did some cool projects along the way. The coolest of which I'm doing now with the Geotech. But starting in the 90s, I won't take you year by year, but in the 90s I worked as a part of the team that produced microprocessor that went into first PlayStation. And then moving to 2000s, I worked on a real-time video streaming app before iPhone was even brought to the market, always on the cutting edge of technology. And then after that, I worked in going to smaller and smaller companies. I worked in a startup in a quantum cybersecurity identity protection field. So as you see from the theme there, I went from more business-oriented to more purpose-oriented companies. And 4.5 years ago, when I started engaging with Geotech, there were three things that really brought me over to the company. The first one was the advanced technology, the notion of bringing artificial intelligence and IoT to such an industry, such a traditional industry as construction and concrete. Then the company from its very beginning had a very big vision and mission on dedicated to diversity and inclusion. So the company from the beginning and by design has about 40% of female employees, and on the leadership level we are 50-50 split. So it's not that we are diversified, we are also included, and we speak 20 different languages, come from 40 different countries. It's a wonderful place generating innovative ideas. And on top of that, there was this environmental mission. So let me just step back and say, concrete is one of the most ubiquitous materials in the world. It's the one most used after the water, and about 20 billion tons are produced every year. It has wonderful properties. It's locally produced. It's pliable. It's fully recyclable. But also it has challenges. It has drawbacks. And one of them is it is very energy efficient to produce, very energy demanding in its production. And it generates about 8% of overall CO2 gas emissions worldwide every year. What Geotech does, the products we have help reduce that by 20% plus, so we can actually see at the bottom line, adding to the reduction of the CO2 emissions, about 1.6 to 2% of reduction that we can contribute. And this is basically what inspires me to come to work every day.
That's awesome. Yeah, we've had water and now concrete. And I think we're going to go back to water. So Beth, maybe I'll hand it over to you. Beth is joining us. Where exactly in Africa are you right now?
I'm in Nairobi.
Oh, there, from Nairobi right now. So welcome, Beth.
Thank you. So hi everyone. So my name is Beth Koigi and I'm from Kenya. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Magic Water, and actually one of our co-founders is a Canadian. So this is quite familiar. So we work with communities that live in water-stressed regions, and it was amazing to listen to Alicia, because I think depending on different geographical area, we have different uses of water, which is very exciting. Function to 50 liters per person per day in urban areas and 20 liters of water per day per person in rural areas. And we're trying to bring that down further because, Kenya is 80% arid.
Beth, I think we're having some, I think it's very hard to hear. It's really choppy right now. So maybe, hopefully, maybe let's see if I go to, I'll move on here and we'll come back to you to see if the internet can settle down, if that's okay. Because I think it's hard to hear. So over to you as we move to the next one. So Kira.
Great. Hi. Nice to have an opportunity to see you all today and participate on the panel with these really amazing women. My name is Kira Torco, and I am the Chief People Officer and Chief of Staff at an Ottawa-based software company called Ascent. And while a software company, what we provide is a platform for complex manufacturers to identify risks across their supply chain through product compliance and sustainability. And so sustainability is built right into the company's mission. It's what we help our customers be able to deliver, and then we reciprocate those values internally in our organization. And I joined the company about 6 years ago, which when you're part of a company that scaled so quickly, makes me a bit of a dinosaur. But I've also been really fortunate to be part of that journey to see how crucial the sustainability elements of our platform have become to our customer base and to our suppliers. And so my journey, I'm not an engineer. We've had a chance to meet a couple of engineers today. I come from a business background, and I've always been driven by doing things that were impactful. It's kind of been a bit of a thread through my career, not just impactful in what the company's doing, but how it's, how I'm able to impact the people throughout the company. So I started out early in finance and then switched into really early stage research and development that was identifying important technologies for Canada. I spent a number of years doing that, moved into the national sports space and led a national organization that drove high performance for Canadian coaches across 67 national sports. And for those of you that have kids, trained all the Timbits soccer and hockey and basketball coaches. So really about driving, great people through great leadership. And then I was connected to Ascent. And when I first got the call, I'm like, I'm helping prep coaches to go to the Olympics in Pyeongchang, Korea. Why would I want to join product compliance? And the more I dug into it, and the more I really saw how the platform had an opportunity to be able to identify risks across global manufacturers' supply chains, I got really intrigued. So through our technology, we're able to identify, where do you have the risks of significant use of inappropriate chemicals in your supply chain? Where's there a possible use of human trafficking or anti-bribery and corruption, or child labor, or the use of conflict minerals? And how do you become more sustainable through your supply chain? And when I first joined, I think there were a lot of people questioning, well, this seems kind of niche. And I will say COVID was a boon for us. When the Suez Canal thing happened and people weren't able to get, running shoes and, dishwashers, and tomatoes are now $10 a bushel, supply chains became a lot more interesting, and the sustainability of supply chains. So I'm proud to be part of something that's having such an impact on such a significant sector.
Awesome. Hopefully we're getting Beth back, but I'll go to Michelle. So the other four panelists are entrepreneurs working in the startups, and Michelle is our investor on the panel. And I've known Michelle for years, and back when she was one of the only female investors I really knew, when I was one of the only women engineers in a lot of rooms. So back then, Michelle, love to hear a little bit of your perspective and some of the fantastic things you're seeing with women in clean tech from the BDC fund.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Krista. You just aged me a lot there, but that's okay. Pay back later. Look, it's super great to be here, and thank you so much to Invest Ottawa for inviting me to the panel. Look, I mean, this has been an ongoing mission, I think, for many in the room. I know Debrilla certainly has been at this for a very long time, as I did see a few more faces in that room. So I'm sure that this is a lifelong journey and mission for many. From the Thrive Venture Fund perspective, I'll give you that kind of first. We're seeing a real boom in the number of women entrepreneurs stepping up to build companies in many spaces. But I will tell you that of all of those companies, many of these women are adding a triple bottom line approach to how they're building. So they are automatically including things like sustainability. They are thinking about how what they do impacts climate. They are thinking about the social impacts and the long economic impacts that they can have by building something of value that their community then can rally around and support and do good by. So I think we're seeing a real movement, a real shift in thinking in the industry overall. And we're seeing women really lead. So as I look at the panelists and I think about what we see both in our pipeline and in the portfolio, we're seeing some amazing technologies be advanced in clean tech, sustainability, and just broadly across the technology industry, I would argue, generally. And for those that aren't building a venture backable company, to use the words of the last panel, many of those women entrepreneurs are also taking the frame of reference, so the lens of how do we make this company good for the environment, good for the community, good for our social impact generally. So I think we're seeing that movement, Krista, just as a part of what's happening in the broader ecosystem. I started my own career in oil and gas before switching into the investment side of the business. And when I left the oil and gas industry, I met a gentleman who had a technology in solar panels. And this was, I'm going to date myself again, this was in the late 90s, 1999 to be exact, when solar panels were really these huge glass towers run by Siemens, and Siemens was kind of the only game worldwide doing this. And I joined that company as the CEO to help build a solar panel manufacturing business in Richmond, BC. And we ended up not being able to get that demonstration facility up and running. And we didn't get the demonstration facility up and running. I know we'll touch on this in the case studies, was because of the fact that it was going to cost us about $60 to $100 million to build that in Canada. And at that time, we were not having these conversations. First, there were no women, but secondly, we were not having conversations about sustainability. We were not having conversations about climate tech, broadly defined. And we were still thinking about how we were going to, just generate enough money to be able to sell the company, take the company through an IPO, and then sell everybody's position. So I think my message right now, as I'm finishing up, would be that we've come a long way, and as an investor, a generalist investor, we're seeing a lot more interesting investment opportunities in this space and in sustainability generally. And as we think about how companies need to be built going forward, considering all of these aspects just as a part of their foundational table stakes. So I'll leave it at that.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. And you don't look your age. I'm just saying that for fun. Today. Beth, over to you. See if we can get your audio in better this time. Your mic is off, Beth. Okay, we're not getting the audio through, so maybe sorry, Beth, this technology is, you'd figure in 2024 we would have this technology thing figured out, but we'll move on.
Yes.
Oh, there you are, okay.
Hello? Can you hear me? I think there is a delay.
We're just going to keep going here. One of the things that's interesting, I'll just give you a few facts about Mars before we go to the case studies, is Mars is North America's largest innovation hub. And we have 5 key executives, 4 of them are women. Our incoming CEO is a woman coming from Michelle's colleague at BDC, and 60% of our staff are female. And if you think about who we support and what we do, I'm very proud of the fact that this wasn't because we signed on to the 50-30-20, but this was just hiring the best people for the job. Right? This was just really focusing. And if you think about what the type of work we do, it's collaboration, it's partnership, it's support, it's mentorship, it's advisory. And you know what? Women just kick ass at it. And that's really, I think, what we see. It didn't take very long before I said something I probably shouldn't have on a panel, sorry. I'm a small town gal at heart and an engineer. Sometimes my roots come out. But anyways, it is a really important thing that as women and with all of our allies that we just stand up and take not the role that we're given because of a diversity initiative, but the rightful role we have because of what we bring to sustainability and to the types of companies that are being created, whether you're the founder, whether you're the head of people, whether you're you're in the engineering department. It's a really important perspective that occurs. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of that. We're also in our 3rd year of our Women in Clean Tech, sponsored by RBC program that has developed some really fantastic programs that have really come through to get more women actually comfortable starting clean tech companies. So I think it's really exciting. So what we wanted to do now is just have and we'll try to make this a quick rapid round with everybody, is let's try to, everybody just give a quick case study of a situation and a problem that your company has solved kind of in the industry, and how hard was it for the adoption side of it? Like, what were some of the barriers you faced? So if we could maybe do a quick rapid round on this with everybody. And Michelle, when it comes to you, same thing on the investment side, some of the, like the rapid round. So maybe we'll go, I'll start this time on stage. So maybe Kira, start with you.
Sure. Rapid round. All right. Has anyone heard the acronym PFAS? Does that ring a bell with anyone? I think there's a few people from Ascent here. So PFAS are essentially forever chemicals. And 97% of us actually have PFAS in our system. You know, we've ingested it. If you did a blood test, it's essentially things that are in Teflon or in cosmetics, in menstrual products, in your dental floss. And there's a huge push right now across the US and globally to reduce the use of PFAS. For example, 3M has said that by the end of 2025, there are 25,000 products that have PFAS in them will no longer be sold in the marketplace. And so a quick win for us is that oftentimes these regulations come up really quickly. You know, they come up because, you know, of some lobbying, and people have said, these things are pretty crummy. But when you've got 25,000 products and you maybe have 70,000 suppliers, how are you able to know where you can find PFAS in your supply chain? So for us, it's been a really big opportunity for us to be able to lever existing data. So maybe I'm jumping ahead to the AI question, to be able to leverage existing data to help companies identify where their biggest risk of these forever chemicals exist in their supply chains.
Awesome. Alicia?
Yeah, absolutely. Water has been around forever and continues to be. It just changes form. But the challenge that we see with water is it's often not at the quality or the quantity that you need it. And we're seeing that more and more as cities grow, they expand, and the water resources are not available. And so it can be a challenge. We're seeing cities like San Francisco deploy a gray water ordinance. That means that every new build in the city needs to be gray water ready. So that means that you're required to have double plumbing, the hefty expense of large gray water infrastructure or whole gray water systems. And it's been a really challenging for some of the plumbing individuals and the builders because it adds significant cost and the homeowners to any kind of net new builds or renovation projects. And so, you know, the Rainstick was recently selected by the World Economic Forum and the city of San Francisco to be part of the revitalization. And so looking at gray water ordinance and looking to see what Rainstick can bring. And so the energy and the water savings, just to put it into perspective, we've been able to validate that you're able to save over swimming pools worth of water for one installed Rainstick system. And in California, because of the water and the energy costs are so expensive, you're also able to save up to $1,000 on an annual recurring basis just from installing a Rainstick. And that's comparing the water as well as the energy savings. And, you know, we've seen that folks have really thought that low flow is the only option, but it forces significant compromise to the overall experience. And so this is something that we've been incredibly excited about. And bringing, you know, this model, I will say, you know, for us, it's getting folks comfortable with the technology and how it works. But, you know, it's definitely, we're starting to see that more and more across North America, this need to decrease water and energy.
Awesome, $1,000, eh? That's for somebody that raised 3 children, that would have been really helpful. And the water that was consumed. Gabriella, over to you.
Thanks. So what Geotech does helps reduce CO2 emissions. But I will also offer a case study of an initiative they've been at for 4 years, and that is providing a platform in the form of a virtual net zero construction conference that we started. The first one was in 2021, but we started about this time in 2020. And the idea is construction industry, and specifically concrete industry, is very traditional and very slow moving. There is a lot of regulation, and for good reasons. We find ourselves, we Geotech, find ourselves way ahead, quite revolutionary, ahead of the curve. And in Europe, the distances may be a little bit shorter, but in North America, it's really, really far. The pockets of innovation exist. They exist in companies, small companies such as Geotech, big companies such as one of our partners, Heidelberg Materials, in their European and North American organizations. Exists in universities like local here in Ottawa, University of Ottawa and Carleton, where our co-founders have done their PhDs, but also in MIT Concrete Sustainability Lab. And in organizations such as US National Ready Mixed Concrete Association and Canadian Concrete Association as well. So we provided this platform where we bring all these people who do their research and their advancement in practical ways of addressing sustainability day in and day out in these little pockets around the world. We bring them all together for one day, and we build this critical mass of exchanging ideas and actually moving our industry forward faster than we otherwise would.
That's awesome. It's always amazing to me when you think of concrete, you walk on it, it's in your house, and you don't realize how much actual science and engineering goes into the back of it. It's just fascinating. Michelle, over to you to end the rapid round.
Yeah, I could talk about this all day. So I've got 2 quick examples for you. The first is, and Krista, I need your help for this because I can't see the audience, but how many folks in the room have bought a pair of Sheertex tights? Just show of hands.
I can probably count under 10, unfortunately.
What?
I know.
Fix that.
But he needs to buy a pair of Sheertex tights.
We will fix that. So Sheertex is actually the brand name. So you'd see that brand if you went onto Costco online, or if you went into H&M retail store. But Sheertex is developing under the brand of Sheertex. That's the brand. SRTX is the name of the mother company, the headquartered company. And what that company is doing is really has developed a technology that creates a sustainable tight and ultimately a sustainable textile. And the way that they do that is they use a very specific property, a very specific polymer that is made sustainably. So end-to-end supply chain sustainability. Kira will talk afterwards about just how to help them measure that. But end-to-end sustainability in terms of the supply chain. So from the raw material right through to the finished product, they use sustainable processes, low water, low heat, in order to produce what you see on the shelf as your Sheertex tight. But what they've been able to discover is that the materials within the chemical materials within the polymer are such that this can be used to replace things like Gore-Tex, like spandex, which use fluoride in the treatment of the materials, which is really not very good for you, not very good for the environment when somebody decides to toss their coat and leave it in the rubbish bin. So what Sheertex is on a mission to do is change the world and empower the textiles industry to create sustainable fashion and sustainable textiles. So you may see over time a replacement of Gore-Tex with some of this material that will be better used. Now, the trick to this from a business perspective and from a capital perspective is that it costs a lot of money to develop the material. Once it's up and running, and once they just launched a new plant in January in Montreal, where they'll be producing the tights as well as the material itself. But But these kinds of projects, these kinds of companies are very capital intensive. So as we think about, building for the future and building sustainably from an investor perspective, we're also thinking about how do we do this in a way that can become capital efficient over time. And, can talk about the solar panel capital inefficiency of trying to build that business back in the day. But these are the kinds of businesses that we're looking at, because we believe that over time, if we put enough capital into the companies today, those companies will sustain themselves because they'll generate enough revenue, but they'll also be able to empower others to take on that same mentality, or they'll be able to dynamically change an industry so that industry actually performs better and gets out of the use of some of these materials that are super harmful to us and harmful to the planet. So that's one example. And then the other quick case study that I'll give you is a company called Earthos. And Earthos, again, some of you may have heard of this company. Earthos is based in Mississauga, and they have created materials for industrial applications that are completely compostable. So if you think about bottle caps or keg caps or anything that you would use that could be, again, thrown into the garbage bin for waste and ends up in a landfill, this team is building solutions using plant-based materials in a very specific composition for industrial applications that will keep those keg caps and those bottle caps out of landfills and in a compostable way that's not compostable, by the way, in 100 years, but compostable in 5 or 6 months. And so that's the technology advancements that they're making in a very short period of time, but that will have long-reaching implications on how we do business. But again, super capital intensive up front, which is part of the challenge with a lot of these technologies today.
Thanks, Michelle. Maybe we'll go to the audience. We have about 5 minutes left this time. I got through 2 questions. We had 4. So does anybody in the audience have a question? Because I could keep asking them questions all day. No questions? Yes. Okay. Oh dear.
Okay, that was not good. I'm so sorry. Oh, you're doing great. Yeah, no, I'm fine. Sorry. Oh, can I help you out? Sorry, guys.
That's okay. Are you okay?
Oh, I am okay. Yeah, sorry. I used to be an athlete, but that didn't look good. Anyways.
Thank you. I just have a question for regarding the materials that could be compostable. How do you find, from the engineering perspective, a material that has the same the same characteristics of a material that is not necessarily compostable? And how do you slowly or rapidly try to incorporate it in products that are already in the market? Thank you.
It's a great question. I'm going to actually refer you to the team for the details of that, because I'm not the engineer behind any of that. But what I will tell you is that they've spent a number of years developing formulations that use chemical combinations of plant-based chemical combinations that have the ability to compost in a much more rapid fashion. They have 2 pilots underway with very, very large multinational organizations that I can't name here, but if you talk to them directly, they may be able to give you some more information about that have been testing these products for the last 2 years and have seen the efficacy in the product such that they've now produced a purchase order, and they're going to market into very specific markets with commercial agreements with that company. So in this case, there was a very large multinational strategic partner, let's say, not an investor, but a strategic partner, helping them to co-develop. The IP, however, does remain with the company, so the company owns all the intellectual property. This company that they partnered with, the strategic partner, is interested in how they reduce their footprint, their carbon footprint, as well as how they do things in a more sustainable way, particularly in companies where they're producing things like caps. So I'm not sure that answers your question specifically enough, but I'm happy to introduce you to the team if you want to talk to them further.
This is where, how do we get the demand and how do we start? This is where we all have the power of our pocketbook, right? Because if we start spending our money on sheer textites instead of the disposable ones, we start to drive and send the signal to the manufacturers that we want them to produce garments with the technologies that with the ability to do the things. So I think there's also the method that we have to remember the power of our pocketbook, because everybody's creating things for us to consume, and we need to tell them what we want to consume by what we buy. So that's part of, I think, an important part of this, buy a rain stick shower, get sheer tex, encourage that if you're buying a home that they use the concrete that you want. Like it's that kind of thing. One more question, and I think that's it for us. Okay, who has the mic?
Yes, I did have a question as well. First, thank you for your time. Really good talk, really inspiring. So kind of on what you're just saying about our pocketbook, I'm wondering from the consumer side, where can we follow and watch for things? Like, we know that there's a lot of sneaky marketing in sustainability. And so just what can we do as consumers? Who can we watch? How can we know like when these innovations are coming?
Great question. I think a website that I use, because I specifically spoke about PFAS, which encompasses things, there's a website called PFAS Free, which identifies a number of manufacturers who don't put these harmful forever chemicals in their products. And something that I've become a lot more aware of is that Ascent became a certified B corporation, which is a certified benefits corporation. And there's a little logo. It's essentially just the letter B, and it's often on, the back or the label for an organization. And so that if you're a certified B corporation, you're buying from it, they've met the highest standards of sustainability, and they've taken into account a much fuller range of stakeholders through the entire process. So I'd look at PFAS Free and certified B corporations.
Yeah, and I would just add to that as well. I think that, typically companies that are doing the right thing in terms of their supply chain, in terms of their hiring practices, really like to share it. And I think particularly for startup organizations, when you have limited capital and you're still putting that on your social media, and you're still celebrating diversity, and you're still celebrating where you manufacture your product, I think it sometimes can be challenging. I think I'm always hesitant of the corporate report on sustainability or the corporate report on things. I mean, I think it's fantastic, but I think the intention, what is the intention? But I think it's pretty, nowadays, it's becoming harder for consumers, but it's also becoming more of a requirement for companies to really invest in some of these areas. And so, yeah, I think product support is becoming better and better. And so if you can't find the right information, send a note to them directly on their chat. And typically, if they don't have the answers, then that's when you start to question.
And you usually know too. Sorry, Krista. You usually
I think
know.
we're getting the hook.
Oh, are we? Oh, we could talk about this for days.
So thank you, everybody, because I do think we are getting the hook. Thank you very much for our panelists. Sorry for Beth. I would have loved to have been able to hear her story. It's very inspirational. She's making water from air. So we talk about the desert. She's solving a real great problem for the world. So thank you to the panelists. You're all inspiring. Thank you for all for today, but not just for today, but for all your work you do to make this a much more sustainable world. Cheers.
Okay, thank you, Krista, Beth, Michelle, Kira, Debrilla, and Alicia. That was a fantastic panel. I've got a few takeaways from that segment. Number one, the fact that we all know we take our water for granted in Canada. I think we can all admit that. We let the tap run a little bit too long, but 300 liters per day when there are communities here in Canada that have no access to clean water at all. I think it's appalling. So anything we can do to reduce that is amazing. Regarding PFAS, I know what PFAS is, and I think it's important for everybody. There was a documentary, actually, if you follow Andrew Waitman, CEO of Ascent, he posted a video about PFAS on LinkedIn, and everybody should watch it. It's really, really important. So if you have Teflon pans, make it a priority to slowly get them out, and you can buy non-PFAS pans in the store. They're marked and labeled. They're a little more expensive, but they'll last a lot longer. So for your health and wellness, I'd encourage you to do that. Michelle Scarborough talked about the degree to which BDC Thrive's portfolio, and more importantly, the pipeline is deep with environmental and social impact. I truly believe, and I don't think I'm alone in this, there is like a major shift that is underway in society, and I think it's got 3 dimensions to it. One is generational. I'm excited about Gen Z and who comes next, because I think they're very clear on what they want for themselves, and we need to embrace that. Women continuing to grow in business and to take up the space that they've earned to make a difference. And the triple bottom line. I think those 3 things are coming together at this time in society, and we should all be celebrating that. So for me, it's an exciting time to be in business, and today's been a real celebration of that. So how about one last round of applause for the panels we've had so far today? Okay, so it's time for our keynote. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Rhianna Lynn. Rhianna is a scientist, creative entrepreneur, AI patent holder, and technologist who is focused on bringing better data to the world's biggest food and supply chain problems. She leads the fastest growing software startup, Journey Foods. This is North America. Like, think about that. That's a big number. I'm excited to hear this story. The company is backed by top VCs in North America, Europe, and Asia. So not North America, global. Let me correct that. Rhianna has been a top consultant and VC to Fortune 500 food and CPG companies, consumer product goods, for those that don't know that acronym. She's currently an angel investor, creative director, and formal Google entrepreneur in residence. Rhianna has been featured in Forbes, this one's a big one, MIT, 35 under 35, and serves as a World Economic Forum tech pioneer. I mean, we're very fortunate to have Rhianna here today to speak to us. In addition to her work as an entrepreneur, Rhianna Lynn is also a sought-after speaker and educator, has taught at Stanford University and Harvard University. She's a vocal advocate for the importance of diversity and inclusion in entrepreneurship. She has worked to inspire and support young people from diverse backgrounds to pursue careers in technology and innovation. Rhianna Lynn is an Austin-based, yay Austin, I love Austin, I'm so glad you're here from Austin, entrepreneur who enjoys growing fruit trees, writing film scripts, and exploring culinary and architectural heritage sites worldwide. An internationally recognized public speaker, keynote leader, and panelist, Rhianna has graced over 230 international and digital stages. So without further ado, this is going to be amazing. Welcome to the stage, Rhianna Lynn.
Thank you so much. Hello, good morning. I first want to say just thank you, Invest Ottawa and the team, for inviting me today. Really grateful to be here. Before I get started, I wanted to ask if we could just take like 20, 30 seconds stretching, standing up, stretching, because I believe sustainable leaders, focus on their bodies first, get a good stretch in. More than anything is that we need to make sure that we, feel great, stretch out, get a lot of the tension and stress out. This software, AI, all of these things, these talks, in many ways could be, and hold a lot of weight for us. So thank you so much. You can sit back down. Thank you for joining today. And I wanted to mention, Ottawa's weather is so interesting. There's beautiful sun. I've been in 3 snowstorms in the past 24 hours, but thank you so much for the invite. So let me make sure that the slides are up. I don't know if I see them. All right, so I am going to discuss AI for good. I've been an AI founder for a little over 5 years now, and I will get into what Journey Foods does. Thank you so much for the introduction. One thing that I wanted to focus on is how we can use AI to build sustainable companies, impact many industries that we're worried about today, and sort of move forward. But through the lens of women, it's International Women's History Month, and I think we need to make sure that we focus on what is at stake, what is at hand right now. So we know that women hold up half of the sky. But what's more interesting than that is that we only hold up about 13% of VC leadership. We only hold up about 10% of, it's a little scrunched here, like the view, but that's okay. About 10% of global land ownership. Unfortunately, we'll definitely change that. And about 2% of AI founders. And as we'll get into on the investment of AI right now and the fact that, not only do we see that in the next 30 years, we'll have to, in the next 5 years, we'll have to feed 8 billion people with rising complexity. But we also have to make many solutions for about 8 to 10 billion people over the next 5, 10, 20 years. And what we know is in the next 6 years or so, it's projected that 1 in every 10 jobs will be replaced by AI. And so when I first started Journey Foods, I sat with the realization that there is 1 food scientist for every 40,000 people. And what was really clear is that we wanted to make sure that with the many food issues that exist today, whether that be food and accessibility, costs, health, diet, I'm sure many of us in this room are facing issues with our own journey to understanding food, whether that be, gluten intolerance or, managing diet around, meat intake, dairy intake. We can all get into those many issues and ailments. One thing's for sure is that we know that our modern food industry has really only been, in the works for about the past 70 years or so. What does that mean? Complexity has risen enormously. The modern grocery store is really only advented around late 1940s or so, right? Right before that, we were sort of self-sustaining individuals. We were just growing food for our families, and there's an average market every once in a while. We in the US and similarly in Canada, we're spending about 18 cents for every dollar on our food and about 8 cents on our healthcare. Can anyone guess what that is today? What do we spend on every dollar for our food? Any guess? 6? No. It's quite opposite. We spend about 8 cents for every dollar on our food, and we spend, can anyone guess how many cents per dollar we spend on our healthcare? It's much higher, but it's 24 to 26%, depending on sort of like which country. And so why would there be such a big shift from less spend on healthcare to more spend to less spend on food? And it's essentially reversed. And more than that, along with the degradation of our bodies within modern grocery has also come supply chains and climate. Over the last 70 years since grocery stores were invented, 50% of nutrient density in your average fruit or vegetable has gone down, both related to soil and air. And more than that, we've seen over the past 3-4 years how supply chain can affect us tremendously when it comes to food affordability and cost. And so at Journey Foods, our goal has been to work on these 3 key issues with generative AI. And so what we do is help food scientists and companies generate alternative recipes, but not just ones that are more nutritious and ones that are a little bit more sustainable and helpful for the environment, but also ones that make sense on the supply chain and with costs. Because let's be honest, at the end of the day, most of the companies that are investing in AI and investing in vast changes within their recipes and formulations want to make sure that the bottom line meets expectations and that it's a smart return on investment. And so we were really the first to seek out and hold that and understand that. As I mentioned earlier, one in every 40,000 people, there are 40,000 people for every one food scientist that exists today. And that number is quite dwindling. Soon it'll be 1 in 45,000 and 1 in 50,000. And that means that for every food item that you see on the grocery store shelf, the average grocery store has about 40,000 different items. Think about all the things that we need to develop within complexity and also scale so that it can last on shelves, so that we understand and meet sort of macronutrient needs. And many companies that are set out today, I'll go into this right now, are trying to solve AI and understand how we can feed people within these complexities in a few different ways. So one, we sort of reach into consumers. Like as consumers change their loyalty, the demographics, and we sort of meet the needs of billions, many companies are trying to seek out ways to understand us more, right? So what are they doing first? They're sort of stalking us in the digital world, right? You know, you tell your friend that you want a sandwich with like great mustard, and all of a sudden you see a restaurant pop up or like a grocery store ad in your Instagram or, you know, in a click through, right? So they're listening to us, and they're both trying to understand what we like, but they're also trying to sort of control and feed us what they think we want based on the highest spender. And so more than ever, AI is sort of just matching up and understanding like prescriptive and predictive analytics so that they can use that in mostly marketing tech AI, right? How do I spend a little bit to get someone to purchase my product more, or to understand the user so that I can develop a product that sells well? Beyond that, we're kind of trying to find ways to use robots to just meet and feed us at a faster pace, right? And so there are many companies that have been testing sort of privately for the past 8 years or so, replacing farm workers, replacing manufacturers, replacing restaurant employees, replacing dishwashers, so that the costs go down and we can in turn, hopefully feed people faster. There are many problems that exist in these, and we'll go into that in a little bit. But we do need to understand and prepare, and I'm presenting this through a food lens, but what does that mean when we try to solve issues outside of food, right? As more companies turn to efficiencies to save money. And then finally here in food, you'll see a lot within logistics and sort of last mile delivery. There are companies that are automating payment processing. You have like the Amazon Go's. There's, you know, smaller grocery stores that are testing out these technologies as well, where you just walk in, they scan your iris, scan your hand, grab a few items. You never pull out your phone or your wallet. And this is all to, you know, I guess, you know, save us time, but it's truly, they're finding more ways to sort of extract and understand how to get us to spend as much money as possible. And while we look to tackle a lot of these problems, you know, with food waste and sustainability within, you know, whether it be electric opportunities or finding ways to take away from the limitations of delivery that in turn cause us to pollute more into the environment, we really have to make sure that as the consumer's global desires change, we keep up with the many pitfalls of our supply chains. And so going back to what Journey Foods does, is that we've looked to find and map out ways with large data sets the key markers of food nutrition that go beyond your nutrition label, as well as items such as greenhouse gas emissions, water use, because we understand, and most people have found this when we, like 20, 30 years ago, most commercials said like malnutrition, hunger were some of the biggest issues and causes of death. We're all right. But it's really like the opposite of that. Really, some of the largest causes of death today are malnutrition, but through overeating of really harmful ingredients. Modern agriculture, such as cow and dairy mass farming. And some of these are the largest emitters and polluters of within our environment worldwide. You'll see that cow farming, mass farming, has more pollution and almost as much pollution as many in the United States alone, as more than 75% of car driving countries worldwide in terms of like total pollution, just like our cow farming. So it's pretty significant if we look at both degradation as well as common causes of cancer, diabetes, mental health issues. Food and overeating, unfortunately, has been inextricably tied to most world deaths. And at Journey Foods, we sort of look at that through using AI to tackle the $3 trillion packaged food industry. At the beginning of the pandemic, we spent in the US and in Canada about $800 billion a year on packaged grocery retail food. We spent about $700 billion a year on restaurants. Today, that number is inching closer to $500 billion on restaurants and $1 trillion per year on packaged grocery retail food. And so what does that mean? If we look at the global spend on packaged retail food, this is also food that is coming from Amazon and our delivery, in our delivery services. What we found is that if you look at the average calorie consumption every single day, 70% of our daily caloric intake comes from packaged, ultra-processed foods, which are deeply tied to some of our biggest health issues, but also environmental issues, as single-use plastics are taking over many of our waterways and much of our cause for pollution today. And so we track the $3 trillion global packaged food industry, in which 1/3 of that comes from North America. And most of the 10 biggest companies behind that, the Mars, and I don't know if I can say that, a sponsor. The 10 biggest companies behind that, most of them are based within Europe and North America, but they are making inroads into the developing global South, and there are ways and opportunities to find alternative, culturally sensitive solutions that we can curb as those populations have more buying power. And so as we think through the solutions for Journey Foods, and I really want to jump into more general AI, our goal is to make sure that we look at both costs as well as nutrition and climate, to make sure that when we develop every single product that goes into a grocery store, we're looking and making sure that that personalization as well as smaller business utility can both ensure that our spend is very fair within the system. What that means is when we develop products, especially with care, we're not looking to make the prettiest slice of bread. We're not looking to use the food dyes to make sure that they pop off the packaging or the aisle. That we really think through the ways that everyone has a voice in the way that we develop data as well as culturally sensitive products so that we can really push for more, what I say is, data and care for development. And so when we look through the opportunities here to feed 8 billion people over the next 6 years, and then beyond that, 9 and 10 billion people with this growing complexity, I truly believe that with AI, we're able to find ways to unlink bad foods in mass scale, but that will take making sure that the teams and the data behind food production and food formulation are diverse as inclusive as possible. And so how do we really get there? And what does that mean for general AI startups as we start to develop solutions within sustainability and within impact industries? Now we have a tough road, right? Just yesterday, if we go back 10, 11 years, Stanford predicted that by this year, we should be spending about $30 billion or the market for enterprise AI will be about $30 billion. And it would be 5x what it was 10 years ago. Now, remember that was 30 billion market opportunity today. Just yesterday, this article is from yesterday, and there are more that are coming up. Saudi Arabia said they're going to spend 40 billion in AI investments. So that's, if we go back and we look at what Stanford predicted, and we look at what it is today, it's 100 billion in artificial intelligence. And if you remember my first stat around women and founders in AI, less than 2% of that spend is going to women developing AI companies. And I think it's really important for us to remember this because most of the solutions out there are replications of what, unfortunately, aren't necessarily solving issues around creating a more sustainable world. And I think what we found is, and what many researchers have found is when women lead policy, when we lead public office, when we lead Fortune 500 companies, oftentimes we perform better because typically, as mothers, as caretakers, as people that have pushed into more capital-driven roles in history, we tend to think about equal care for all in the way we design solutions. And what we really need to focus on and what is most key about this opportunity in speaking here today is that the need to be honest as we think through this is most of the women with the great ideas that can impact the future of AI are getting underfunded. And what does that mean for us? That means that we need to build together more. That means that we need more resources to understand how we create AI and data or create partnerships that solve for everything from water use to reparations to the way we create products for our hair and for our skin and for our children. I think one thing that I'm very excited to discuss with Parisa is all the solutions that we can enable, especially as we think about making a more inclusive AI universe. What I really want to leave with today as well is that a little bit more about my story. As I was founding Journey Foods about 6 years ago, and I said, I'm going to start with fruit snacks. Fruit snacks, if we think about over the past 130 years, most people don't know this, but one of the most one of the industries in the food items and the packaged food items that has the most resilience against economic downturns are candy. Why? Because It's fairly cheap, makes us feel good, and evokes a lot of nostalgia. And when I was thinking about that, our team decided, how do we think about a food item that is recession-proof almost, and also is easy to develop and maintain, has long shelf life, and then we could test with, perhaps AI. And so we started making smoothie cubes, which are just, 3/8 inch cubes that are essentially smoothies that sort of like print out into little fruit snacks. We wanted to bring as much nutrient density on the go as possible. And as we were sharing the story of how we were using AI to create these recipes for these little cubes, a lot of larger companies that we know of, like larger pasta companies and noodle companies and cookie companies, start coming to us. But at the same time, as we started talking about AI and food recipe and development, there were a lot of leaders that were like, this sounds crazy. Like, how are we going to replace the food scientists? I mean, one day we had 200 food scientists email us with just complaints and just telling us, like, you guys are crazy. Like, this will never work. This is, you have no idea what you're talking about. And what I realized in that moment was, one, we have to be very sensitive to the fact that people are going to lose their jobs in this decade to neural networks and to AI. Two, how do we make sure that they're a part of that process as we're building these mental models and these neural networks? And three, if you scare that many people, you're probably onto something as well. And so as we were building out here and sort of exploring it, one thing that I got a lot of pushback on from a lot of leaders in the industry were opportunities and comments around, like, the sugar industry is never going to let you come in and, like, use AI to go against it. Like, they're going to fund everything possible, right? But then if you listen to consumers, we don't want more sugar in our items. We want less sugar. We want to make sure that we have long lives. We are scared of metabolic diseases. We are scared of most 80% of all autoimmune diseases are found to be within women. There are many things that we are discovering that also are paired with the rise in education in Instagram and TikTok and YouTube that, some of the industry just isn't prepared for. And so, as even in the last talk, when we discussed all of the different ways that PFAS can come into your system, is the same way that we're going to see, larger community uproars around the items in our food. There are already people realizing that Japan and Europe have banned certain ingredients in our food that we have had, over the past 5 years that we're very behind in. And so as more of the opportunities become apparent, I think it's very key for us and for me to think through and to share the story of how it's been somewhat of a hard journey to think about how to build an AI solution that mimics the brain of 500,000 people. There are 500,000, even though I said there's one food scientist for every 40,000 people worldwide. There are 500,000 food technologists and food scientists that exist within this industry. And that means that potentially what we predict is that we can maybe replace not just Journey Foods, but just, AI and food development in general can maybe replace anywhere from like 50 to 80,000 of those jobs, which is very significant. And in all of this pushback and this realization, one thing that we found that's been most key is that the creators and the founders and the scientists, as well as the AI engineers that have joined us or have created other companies and solutions, both in small companies and within global leaders, are very cognizant of the fact that the best solutions today that we should invest in take everyone to the table when it comes to designing data. And I truly believe that as we think about who's going to be at the table with our next solutions and sustainable development, while women are truly the key, we need to make sure that women that are from diverse backgrounds, that are victims, right? When we design, we need to make sure that we're not just designing for experts or people that have gone and gotten PhDs and MDs or have led big companies, but within our database and within our team, we've made sure that we've brought on women to design our large language models and our data sets that have suffered from metabolic diseases, that have suffered from not being able to afford and feed their families. And they're tagging data sets with us as well. And so I just want to close with that and make sure that we share that as we design for the future of AI, we need to make sure that women are funded at 50% as we hold up half the sky. But more importantly, that we make sure and we design together with diversity and victims included at the table. And also, I just want to leave with, as we sort of venture into this fireside, we leave with a bunch of gratitude here because while I don't want to sort of bring in dystopian fear, it is very true that we are going to lose a lot of jobs in the upcoming years while we still need to solve a lot of major issues around the environment and around our sort of global health. And I think that it's more important than ever that we have these conversations, that we're supporting and building leaders in this room. And so I want to really truly thank Sonia Shori and Katie and Aubrey and the rest of the Invest Ottawa team, and looking forward to answering more of your questions, Parisa, with this chat. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Parisa Zare. I'm the strategic lead and clean tech lead at Invest Ottawa, and I'm super happy to be here with you all today. Rihanna, thank you so much for sharing the wonderful story of your startup with us. You've been doing lots of presentation at international events. What do you think are the most critical conversation we need to be having around sustainability, especially during the International Women's Month?
Beyond just like making sure that, us as builders and founders and, team managers and, whatever role is here, I think it's more important than ever, just like personally, like personal sustainability. Like truly, I want to urge that because you're not able to build and solve many problems if you're facing burnout, if you are unable to sort of show up every day. And I think like first I want to say like self-sustainability is really key to making sure that we're building, more impactful futures. But beyond that, I think if we look at the most sustainable opportunities, I think that they're right in front of us. One thing that I liked from the last talk is that she mentioned sort of building sustainable concrete. One thing that as I travel, one thing that really bothers me is like seeing how much water and ponds and yards and spaces are like really polluted with all of the single-use plastics that we use to consume beverages and food. And there's a wonderful amount of opportunities for us to build the next generation of builders that solves a few issues at hand. One, we're having a housing crisis in many communities and many cities across the world, where people are unable to afford homes that we thought we should afford like just 10 years ago. And I think that if we build more builders and build more building solutions within the waste and the pollution that we have today, I think we'll find that we can create some really interesting things, whether that's, alternative woods or, concrete. I think those are some great opportunities, sort of building and housing solutions together within sustainability. Of course, AI. At Journey, we recreate food recipes and food formulations. Like, what does that mean when we recreate makeup or like can we recreate sustainable lipstick or bottles? How can we recreate shoes and diapers? And we can use AI for some of those solutions, right? We can look at all of the different possibilities of chemicals that exist and try to waste less, just even in the trials. One of our earliest examples of like sustainability before we were even mapping sustainable data was to get cookie trials down from, you can't imagine how many times like these test kitchens and labs will like use products just to like test out cookies to bring into the market or packaging, right? Sometimes they're like 70, 80 trials. And what we first asked was, how can we get it down to just 4 trials where you wouldn't even have to leave the computer before you went into the test kitchen or the lab? And I think that's where AI could really help accelerate, where we don't go into the material world yet and limit some of those pilots and testing and in raw material use. I also think that there's a unique opportunity to use AI and some of the solutions today to educate people better. One thing that's been interesting to read is like how much the pandemic has affected education and sort of math and science attainment over the past few years, because they found that poor students or rural students that, and even wealthy students that spent time away from school really lost like quite a bit of like standard growth within STEM fields, especially. And I think there's really interesting ways to use AI to, especially for, sort of the under 13, under 18 adolescents, to reinforce education within some of the apps that we're using every single day. I don't think that we use AI within education enough, and hopefully like a lot of former teachers can go into that. And so like, how do we educate our young generation around sustainability with reinforcement of, positive learning within, the TikToks and the YouTubes of the world? I think there's some more opportunities there too.
Such a great point. We can even use these tools to maybe reinforce education internally in our organization.
Yes.
To become more ready when thinking about sustainability solutions. You have had such an inspiring journey from being a scientist and then becoming an entrepreneur. Could you share some of the challenges that you have encountered and some of the lessons that you have learned along this journey with our wonderful founders in this room?
When I first went into my career, I actually became an entrepreneur fairly early on. I was just like sitting in a lab. I was working under some wonderful people. I was working in the lab that the First Lady, Michelle Obama, was working in right when she left to go to DC back in 2008 and 2009 for Obama's first presidency. But like something about that was still fairly boring to me, to just like sit in a closed building every single day. And one of our scientists found a way to do community-based participatory research where we would go out into the community and sit with people and understand how they could better come into genetics labs. And that's when I knew that one thing that I found was even all these people that were facing we were doing a vitamin D study on how vitamin D in northern climates led to increased risk of breast and prostate cancer. And even though there was a lot of similarities and we could draw through lines of like how much sun you got and like what latitude you lived at, what was more obvious was the diets. And in that research, I found that, I would probably want to make a little bit of a jump outside of the lab. To be honest as well, like when I was in grad school and they told me how much like scientists are making, I thought that wasn't enough. So I said, like, I don't know if I can change that many things unless I like invent something, get some patents, or like become an entrepreneur. And I also think in many ways, even though we need to work together, science, academia, and policy is too slow. And which is such a beautiful part of industry and entrepreneurship now, is that we can really move things much faster, as we've seen, especially in things like, logistics and transportation. And some of the biggest challenges for me have been rewiring my brain to like think through scientifically with like new AI, but also in fundraising. I mean, most women only get about 3 to 4% of venture spend, which is abysmal. So as a woman, you can see that I faced that. Even with a lot of my background in opportunities, and more than that, less than 0.5% of Black women receive funding, when we make up almost 20 times that in the population. And so going through the challenges of understanding how to get funded, do I belong there, imposter syndrome, I think that's a lot of what women face and immigrants face when they come and try to build fast-growing solutions today. And also, sustainability looks so different in all of our communities. Like, there are probably ways that your parents recycled or upcycled within your households that, like, maybe someone you went to school with didn't upcycle. And literally the way your parents recycled in your household, or the way your community or way your family did it in the country that you grew up in, could be like a world-changing solution. And if the funders did not have that experience, they cannot see that can be like a game-changing solution. And so I think like that pattern matching and building more of a support network that is diverse is really key as well. And that has been a challenge for me, is like my brain works differently because I have had a different life upbringing and story. And once it clicks, it just clicks, but sometimes it's a little bit too late, or it's taken too long.
Talking about our background in maybe like waste management in our household, I remember my mom, we used to like wash the fruits with some water so it was still clean. We could wash something like rice with that for like the first round, and then use it to water the plants. So that was a full cycle.
You have a full waterway solution,
Yeah.
right?
Right there at home. So I think it's such a privilege that you are also an angel investor. And you have the understanding, you come with understanding that is unique for many of angel investors. What qualities do you look for in startups, especially around sustainability solutions?
And, I've had the opportunity between businesses to work with some great investors and investment firms, as well as become an angel investor. Right before I started Journey Foods, I joined the first Black CEO of McDonald's, who also created McCafe. I mean, McDonald's has its own storied history, and sort of sustainability and health. But I mean, that was still a great feat. And, his next phase of life was, how can we invest in startups that are creating the future? But one thing that I found as I look and invest in founders, and usually what I do is sort of follow founders for several months. Even when I like to invest in some artwork too, and I do this as well. I'm like, okay, this artist made a phenomenal painting, and then I haven't seen them make any art in like 8 months. And I'm like, I don't know if like, I might buy the art because I love it, but usually I buy 2 pieces from that artist. if I think I can sell one to make up for all my other, I don't know, we can get into that separately, but what you want to make sure, like I said, you want to make sure that that founder has built consistency and presence and energy into their idea. And you don't, having a founder face burnout is like, it's really heartbreaking because you really believed in that. But like once, if you don't get past a certain level, most people forget, like the company is the founder, right? Like if that founder goes away, oftentimes before Series A or Series B, that company cannot survive because the founder is the administrator and the idea maker and the salesperson and the fundraiser. And so you have to look for those qualities. But when we think about, and I look at those impact opportunities, like, is that founder building that company because it's in trend? Like 2 years ago, were they like, we have like a table chair company. And then today, are they like, we use AI to make our chairs? It's like, no, don't just like add AI and like, you're not actually like making these chairs with like AI, like manufacturing bots. You're kind of just like following that trend. But like, you can really sit down with the people that are super passionate about the industry, super passionate about that problem, whether they faced it or their co-founder faced it or their parent faced it. You kind of have to look for people that believe so deeply about that issue that they want to continue to break at it and pivot because it's such a hard industry to push through. Entrepreneurship can be so challenging, especially in today's market when funding is a little bit slower. You know, like 2 years ago, you could raise a $1 million round in 30 days, right? Today, it could take 6 to 8 months. And so both the grit, but also the balance, it should definitely be present. And you want to make sure that they're along for the ride because I've invested in a couple startups where, you know, they got a check or, you know, they went on vacation and they didn't come back after that. And that could be pretty challenging. Yeah.
Yeah, truly. I think just coming back to the question about AI trends and its impact in the creation of sustainable solution, I feel like if there is a right setting, all these founders who have limited resources, they can leverage AI tools to maybe move their company forward to a certain extent. Okay, moving to you wanted to add something to that?
No, I mean, today there are so many solutions that exist for founders to build fast. A lot of top builders today, a lot of top investors, and I truly believe that like there will be people that build $100 million and $1 billion businesses with just 2 or 3 people. When a few years ago you needed 17, 20, 50 people to build $1 billion business or startup. But there are people that will run 5 businesses with just using AI tools. As much as I talk about the elimination of jobs, and I do believe that every municipality needs to test out universal basic income as soon as possible. This is a real issue. I think that if you are building something today and feel really boggled down by fundraising, if you have sort of a, you know, if you're like an English teacher, I tell some of my team members that like used to teach or are like professors, I'm like, if you don't use Quillbot or ChatGPT, like I'm going to strangle you right now because like I know you don't I know you think you're the best writer in the world, but I really need you to save as much time as possible so that we can get through this and like you can go home and go to sleep and rest, right? Like I think at the end of the day, you have to preserve your time. That's more important than any of this. And like leave it up to the people and make sure you voice the need to support and find alternatives for the jobs that are going to be lost, for the ideas that are not going to be surfaced that need to be surfaced. I think you need to kind of create balance I remember growing up, I had a grandmother that was like a yogi, like before her time. She was like really early in bringing yoga to the States and to Canada. And I had another grandmother that was like super investor, like real estate, like capitalism head. And she would buy me all, like that grandmother would buy me all the great gifts. And then I had the other yoga grandmother would buy me all of the like, all my gifts at Christmas or whenever would be like from like a vintage market. You know, like when you're 6, you're like, I don't want this like vintage Barbie. Like, what is this? But one thing that I've learned in this experience and like this duality of growing up with these two women that, you know, have been life-changing for me is that like there's so much beauty and understanding and balance in the world where you can find that and build and think through that. And I love that I can think with so much care about the way that I build. And I truly believe that that's how we should look at the solutions that we build within AI, but also how we employ them in our daily lives. There is a lot of opportunity to bring ethical and good building into how we utilize these tools if we also service the fact that these are impacting lives today. And I think that's really important.
Amazing. I think you're equipped to write a type of rich dad, poor dad type of book with your grandma stories.
Yeah.
And before we open up to hear from the audience, just my final question, you're also a startup advisor, and you have a unique vantage point in observing trends within the whole ecosystem. Could you share some of the trends that you're seeing in the food tech sector?
You know, what's interesting is that, you know, a couple of years ago, everyone was like investing in cell-based like meats and plant-based meats. And one thing that I found that the investment in like alternative packaging will continue to grow, like finding different ways to use alternative materials for alternative packaging. One major pullback, though, is that consumers don't just want to eat out of a lab, even if it means like eliminating animal agriculture. And so there is a shift back to just slow eating, slow natural farming. Like, how do we have just very high quality meats, very high quality whole foods? And so scaling the whole and slow food system, I think is truly on trend, as well as sort of minimalism and you know, product and ingredient recipe labels. And so as much as everyone's excited for like, and have been excited for alternative meats, I think it's really important that we understand that there's big opportunity in like hyper-local food systems and true food systems that remain and have been at our core before, you know, sort of modern food manufacturing. And I think that's truly beautiful to like invest in those slow food systems.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I think we're ready to take some question from the audience.
Yeah.
Question, anyone?
So considering the fact that public policy and regulation is always delayed, and we know this, and that AI will be replacing many blue-collar worker jobs, and the fact that you use the example that now we have these 2 to 3 person companies that are building billions of wealth, how does that not further inequalities, especially when the ones building the AI are majority males in STEM programs who are majority white, who are able to have access to those Harvard University degrees?
Yeah.
I feel like it's inherently, there's an inherent conflict to it. So that's my question.
No, absolutely. I think, as I said, you know, municipalities, federal government should be exploring universal basic income alternatives. I also think that, like, if you are a single individual that builds a $1 billion company with 3 employees and a bunch of AI tools, you should probably be taxed like 80%, and that should go back to, housing programs and income programs. Like, most absolutely, there's no reason why someone should build, a $1 billion, $100 million company with 3 people. Like, I truly believe the AI that most of the AI, 90% of the AI that's been built to date is to create a new slave class, but it is just computers. And that has tremendous repercussions. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Akil. It is really inspiring to hear from all these wonderful women, and as a man, I feel like men need to step back and let women run the world now. But I also want to bring the conversation back to today, which is sustainability and Mother Nature. So humans are a part of an ecosystem. And I feel like we've moved so far away from believing that we are a part of it that we're destroying the world we live in. We are in the 6th mass extinction. So all the other species, except for humans, are suffering. Humans are also suffering PFAS, microplastics. We've got all these issues. Bringing it back to machine learning and AI, ML and AI systems are only as good as where they learn from. So I think that we shouldn't be learning from humans. Can we learn from nature? And how can we incorporate more nature-based solutions into technology? Because I feel like AI is a really good reset for us to figure out our priorities as a human species as well as part of an entire ecosystem. So do you have any ideas on how we can do that?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I can't answer all of that because, I'm just limited here. But, as much as I do believe that we do not have enough representation of the global South in creating these solutions, which are much more diverse than what are at the table today. I think we need to listen to mushrooms more. That's just like a full system of, connection that is more powerful than we believe. And there's like DJs making like music out of like electrodes and like mushrooms. And I think there are so many things that in nature we need to build. I think we need to be building, like our co-working spaces need to be in grass, and we need to like not be wearing shoes, and we just need to like connect as much as possible as we're building as well. So I'm really happy that you brought that up. I do believe that I've even found myself, especially in the food world, where it's like, yeah, we're probably going to build like this 3D printed steak, right? And it's like, we don't need to build a 3D printed steak. Like truly, like we just need to create vertical systems and home systems that allow for us to connect with the food more ourselves and not rely so much on actors and benefactors that don't really care about, our tables. And I'm happy you brought that up, but I most definitely think that the less disconnected we become to these solutions and the more we build within nature, the more we build with people that have not had access or been builders before, the faster we'll have, solutions that like degrade us less in turn. Yeah. Great questions.
Amazing. I think that is it for today. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
So if you'd like to stay up, we're going to do some speaker photos at the very end. But that was an incredibly powerful keynote and discussion with Parissa following. And these are the dimensions I took away from the talk: technology, food security, food quality, entrepreneurship, investment as a Black woman, even if you are MIT and WEF backed, but still Rihanna did it, right? Grit. I talk about grit a lot. Like if you're passionate about something, you find a way. It's hard, but we have to find a way. So inspiring, so thank you. I'd like to thank also I love Austin, I said that earlier, but I feel like Austin and Ottawa are very much sister cities. Music and technology are the heart of the culture here, and so it's a fantastic way to celebrate. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today in person and online, and our speakers, guests, and collaborators near and far. It's critically important that we continue this conversation. I love the honesty in the room, from Melissa talking about the reality of VC funding, Rihanna talking about the reality of unemployment, jobs that are going to disappear forever. Like, if we don't face it, it's not going to get better, so we've got to find solutions. So creating a sustainable world, that is what this is all about. And to realize our goal, to realize a critical mass, we have to come together as women, as leaders, in the region, Ottawa, Gatineau, in Canada, and around the world. So a special thank you to our International Women's Month title sponsor, BDC Capital's Thrive Venture Fund, to our collaborators, Mars Discovery District and Communitech, and to our event partners, the U.S. Embassy and MDK Business Law. All of you have helped make this event amazing. The content and the learnings have been tremendous. Invest Ottawa, as we all know well, strives to deliver top-tier events and that truly make a difference, and we really want your feedback on today. So if you can share your experience, you're going to receive an email to your registration email address with a post-survey event, or you can follow a QR code as well. Speaking of top-tier events, we have one more can't-miss event for the International Women's Month 2024, taking place on March 26th from 5 to 7 p.m., titled, How Can I Build a Successful Online Business? With the Jen Harper, founder and CEO of Cheekbone Beauty. So you can register online, and Sonia Shori, thank you so much for all that you do. Katie, Audrey, team, it's been a phenomenal event today. So thanks all again. It's time for lunch. Have a great day.